These are incredible stories, man. They are the best of humanity, the worst of humanity. The last episode I did was with a guy named Fredericks. He was abused by his close family friend before he was 10 years old. Became a drug addict, a gambling addict, spiraled as you would. And one day he saw Dennis Pegg with another little boy. He drives to his house, kicks his front door open, and he's got a knife in his hand. Dennis turns to the door and stabbed him to death. He'd never told anyone prior to that night. And that's part of the reason that I had him on, because he talks about how to deal with this. Man, especially I love hearing about terrorists getting smoked, obviously. So I had Brent Tucker on my show, who's a former Delta Force operator. He told the story about Chris Robinson. He picked up Chris's body, carried it to the helicopter. That's your best friend, man. Where the else are you gonna hear a story like that? I forget the actual circumstances of how he got killed, but those are the guys that are doing the Bin Laden raid. So did you happen to see Shawn on Tucker? He talked about the CIA infiltrating podcasts.
And I know one of them I'm right about. Hey guys, if you're not subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and hit that like button on the video. And if you don't have time to watch this episode right now, no problem, but I'd really appreciate it if you would save it to your watch later playlist. Finally, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below. Thank you. What were you doing out in Montana?
Yeah, dude, I was, well, that's why this got delayed a couple days, I guess. But, yeah, man, I've picked up hiking, just getting out in the woods.
Just picked up hiking.
Yeah, gosh, that's been one of those things that's been on my list for a long time. And dude, the thing about it is you can't just go out into the wilderness willy-nilly and around and, people get killed doing that sort of thing.
100%.
So I was like, okay, I know that I want to do this, but I need to educate myself and be safe and make sure that I don't get eaten by a bear in the woods, and that sort of thing. So again, I just been putting it off, and yeah, bro. Also, like, I don't know if you can relate to this, but all my friends are domesticated and married and have children now, and I'm the last remaining.
It's like a half and half for me.
Yeah. So you and I can, obviously we work 24/7, but we have the lifestyle that we can kind of just pick up and do things, and my friends don't. So I have all these trip ideas in my mind, even for like a short weekend thing, and nobody's ever down to just send it. Yeah. So yeah, anyway, long story short, I picked up hiking. One of my friends lives out in Colorado. She's super into it. I learned a bunch from her, and yeah, man, I've just been doing these little weekend trips and living in the city, dude, it gets to you after a while, and there's something like restorative about nature for me, and just walking around and like doing a little bit of suffering too. Do some hard hikes and just breathe some fresh air, and I come back feeling like a different man.
See, I think there's a fine balance between it, right? Like, I'm a huge city guy. I like being around a lot of people, but like, you're here every day for so long. Yeah. We're naturally inclined to kind of be out there, breathing the fresh air, smell nature, live among it a little bit. And I love that little getaway once in a while, which I didn't even do for like the first 4.5 years of this podcast until I went to the Amazon. But like, there's something very resetting about that.
The Amazon's a little different than Colorado or Montana, I'd say.
It's actually a lot safer than you think, believe it or not.
We should talk about that. But yeah, dude, one thing, I don't know if you can relate to this too, just like everybody out west is just nicer than they are here.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I'm walking, like when I would go by myself and go sit in a hotel bar and just start like striking up conversations with people. And like if you just did that here, for example, walking on the street in New York City, somebody would look at you.
The f*** is wrong with you?
Yeah, like you got a dick on your forehead or something. And like, it just, I'm out there and I like the person that I am in that situation more. So I'm like, okay, that I need to bring that back here and be that guy, because you and I, like, we enjoy asking questions and getting to know people and like having conversations. So
absolutely.
Can't let these New Yorkers dissuade you from being yourself.
Listen,
Julian,
I love it. And it depends where you go too. Like where you're talking about, like out in God's country.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are like, well, how you doing, feller? And they're so nice, and it's very cool. But if you juxtapose like New York with LA, in New York they'll be like, go yourself. Yeah. But they tell you that to your face, and it's a term of endearment. In LA, they say, hey, how you doing? And the minute you turn your back, they stab you like OJ, or like OJ did. You get my point,
That's
right?
a valid point.
Like, it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
but in a very ass backwards passive way. So I'll take the East Coast on that. And also I love the rush of the action. I love, like, you know, you walk outside and there's a homeless person next to like a billionaire. And it's like, what's going to happen at the bodega right there? I don't know, but I'm going to stand here and watch. Like, there's something beautiful that is nature itself.
I know.
You know.
That's a valid point. And it is nice being able to order food after like 9 p.m. and
That's
stuff.
right.
So.
Yeah. How do you even do that out there? Like, do they have Uber Eats? Is that a thing?
Bro, I was just surviving on Uncrustables and RX bars. And, you know, you got to do what you got to do.
Uncrustables.
Yeah. You don't like Uncrustables?
No, I don't like Uncrustables. That's got like the seed oils. You can't be having any of that.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things. You gotta just let it rip sometimes, I guess.
I guess so. You look like you work out, so you'll be all right.
Yeah, well, that's what we were just talking about off camera. I lose a couple pounds every time I go on a hiking trip. But, you know, I was like, if there's ever a podcast that I could rock a sleeveless.
I know, you should have done it. In fact, before you said that, I was going to go change my shirt.
I know.
You know.
Next time.
When in Rome.
Next time.
Anyway, but dude, listen, I really enjoy your podcast. It's nice to see you've been sticking with it and staying with it a while. I think I first met you when you were about maybe 5-6 months into it and a few episodes in. But the editing that you do, as someone who owes my entire career to being able to like do some editing, like I really appreciate it. It's the intricacy of the cuts, the way you use the music to get people hooked on it, and then having, you know, 3, 4, 5 hour conversations on very dense subject matter as well with some really serious people. It's hard to do, and you put it all together really, really well. So you've been at it a while, and you know, I just want to show my respect to that and have you in here to talk about it.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you having me. It's cool to be here because I watched you when you were at your parents' house before I started my show, and that's part of the reason why when you sent that text and, you know, to invite me on the show, I was like, that's not an invite that I'd turned down. And I have turned a bunch down, just to be frank. Not that like I'm a hot commodity or something, but like I just, you know, man, like it's contrary to popular belief, like people think like if you have a podcast, you enjoy being in the public eye. And for me, you know, if you look at the way my show's set up, it's entirely about the guest. And that's for a number of reasons. But one of them is because I really don't like the attention. So again, you're popping my cherry here, being that I'm on the other side of the camera. But again, I think that's also only fair that I do a podcast where I'm doing a lot of talking, because it's, you know, I'm interviewing people, I'm keeping my mouth shut. They're doing a lot of talking, and it's I think it's fair for me to be on the other side of the table, so to speak. But yeah, bro, thank you for having me. It's cool to see what you've done. And you were part of the reason, and we'll talk about this, but you know, you were one of the people that inspired me to start my own show, and mainly because, like, I know your story. I know how you started and how you just quit your job and sent it and bought a bunch of shit from B&H and like started in your parents' house, and you were like subconscious proof to me that it was possible, that you could just pull it out of thin air. You know what I mean? And dude, like everything that I know about shorts, I picked up from you. So thanks for that. But anyway, thank you for having me.
That's awesome to hear. Hell yeah, man. I mean, look, it's hard, as you well know, but it's the kind of thing where if you're willing to burn the boats and you have some level of talent at it, it's not to say you're good on day one, but like there's something you can work with there that you can improve upon. It's possible. It's just like, you and I were talking before camera, you know, kind of shutting off your life to go do something, anything. It doesn't have to be a podcast. It could be starting a business. All my business owners out there know exactly what I'm talking about. That's kind of a daunting task, because in some ways it's like the rest of the world will keep going and you have to press pause on yours, but time's still moving, you know? So kudos to you for actually doing that. But it, like, was this something you wanted to do years ago and you were just waiting for the right moment to hit, or why did it start when it started in 2023?
So yeah, I think probably around, it was like 2020, right after COVID, maybe, I started getting heavy into like a lot of self-improvement stuff. Started reading a lot of I don't know, like self-help is kind of the term to use, but you know, all those books, and listening to podcasts and interviews and stuff like that. And so I started getting on that kick, and just trying to, honestly, man, just start to understand myself and learn more about myself and that sort of thing. And just kind of by extension, I started listening more to podcasts and getting on YouTube and listening to interviews and that sort of thing. And I got to a point where, like, I don't know, maybe 2022 or something like that. It was pretty fast. I just started feeling like a pull to do it.
What were you doing at the time, work-wise?
Selling software. So, and
that sounds wild.
Well, it's it's not going to light your soul on fire.
I was going to say that wild was code word for boring.
I mean, some people it does, and hey, God bless. Like, I'm happy for you. But but again, bro, there's a lot of wonderful perks of that job. Number one is it's very autonomous. So, I mean, your manager will make or break you in any role, I guess. But I had, shout out to Eric. He was an epic manager, super cool, let me do my thing. And bro, I was working from my apartment in my underwear on my laptop
right
all day.
Over here?
Yeah.
You living in Jersey City?
Yeah. So yeah, I had a lot of time to listen to podcasts. And that's kind of how it started. But what was your original question?
Well, I was saying, like what made you jump when you did? Into it, like full force.
So, dude, I don't know. I kind of felt that pull, and I was just telling Deef this a second ago off camera. Like, I think that people have a lot of ideas that bounce around in their head, and they think about, like, it's a stupid question, but like if money was no object, or like, ideas, even if it's, starting a business, or, if you're into cooking, like you want to start an Instagram where, you cook or whatever. People have these ideas, and there's a million reasons that they give themselves not to do it.
Right.
The problem with that is one day you wake up and you regret having not done it because you're too old and now you're and like in my life, man, like my one the thing that scares me the most is regrets. And so I think it's Bezos. This is a Bezos term, but like this regret minimization framework.
Regret minimization framework.
Yeah, framework. I might have thrown framework in there. I don't know, but that's a Bezos thing. I don't know. Dr. Evil, but yeah, it's just basically, man, like I just want to do things to not wake up one day with regrets. So like, you just pull the trigger on something and don't worry about, all the potential consequences. So that was it for me, man. I just didn't want to wake up having not done it, just feeling that sort of slight pull towards it.
You know what I think about sometimes with this? Because I understand exactly what you're saying. I had all the same thoughts, if you will, but if I had consciously taken the time to think about and like quantify in my head all of the things that would be required for me to even get this thing off the ground, and then let's even assume I had a magic superpower and I could know exactly what it looked like when I started to do that, like how this kind of edit would happen or what would need to be required of this, which I didn't know that. If I had thought about all those things, even the stuff I knew and then the stuff maybe I could have magically known, I would have never began. And so there's something about just being like, F it, to use your term, send it and go, where it's like, well, now I don't have a choice, and like today is in my control, and I'm going to make what I can of it and try to move this thing, 0.01% forward from where it was yesterday. And you seem to get that because it's not there's no way that you can properly fully plan for stuff. There's only ways, in my opinion, that you can outline a plan of like, all right, here's the 5 important things I need to accomplish, like in generalities, and then whatever the 7,000 things that come out of that are, we'll figure that out as we go along. And just don't think about it. Just put your head down and go. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Week 1 down, already got my Eagles in a victory, and we're looking for that 2-0 with a little rematch from the Super Bowl last year. And you know that I can play along on Prize Picks by trying to guess what each of my favorite players are going to do in the game. Is Saquon Barkley, aka the best running back in the NFL and freshly minted #1 out of the NFL top 100 players as voted on by his peers, is Saquon Barkley going to have more than 1 touchdown or less? You know I'm going more. Will Jalen Hurts run for a touchdown and pass for more than a touchdown? You know I'm going more on that too. And over in the AFC, will the reigning MVP Josh Allen have more or less than 270 If you saw him last week, that dude looks like he's going for 300 every week. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just have to pick more or less on 2 to 6 different player stat projections, and if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Whether you're using Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more, you're going to be able to get quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports, so join millions of users and sign up today. You can download the app today by using the link in my description below and also using code Julian in the app to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think there's an element of, to me, being strategic about it. So like you want to do planning on the front end, but there's also such a thing as analysis paralysis, right? Like you can dig yourself into a hole where you want it to be perfect, and then you never end up putting something out, but you got to pull the trigger eventually. And that's something Mr. Beast says, right? He's like, you can. You want to, obviously it's when you put something out like that, something that we do, it's a reflection of you and it's a reflection of me. Mm-hmm. And like, especially if, you just come out with it kind of out of nowhere and you're like, this is me, this is my work, this is what I'm doing. It's a reflection of you. So obviously you want it, if you care about it, and I care deeply about this, you want it to be great. And so like, it's easy to sit there and think about like, okay, I want this to be perfect and this to be perfect. But eventually, like, again, by all conventional Mr. Beast YouTube logic, nobody's going to see your for a really long time, which is, we can talk about that. That didn't end up being the case for me because I got really lucky. Quick. Dude, I got, I got lucky with John, and I'll tell you that story about how we got there. But
quick question for you. When you went down with John, when he was recording with Danny Jones, one of the many times, like a few years ago, before you launched your podcast. Like Danny's one of my best friends. Yeah. I've been down there a bunch. I know how amazing his operation is and how long it took to build it and all the work that he puts into it. When you were sitting in there, I think this is relevant for people out there thinking about doing something and being overwhelmed by what they already see of people who've done it before them. Was there a party that's like, holy, like, how the f could I ever get it to this level?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm glad you asked it because, like, I'll tell people the story because I don't want to make it seem like I had the balls to just pull the trigger and like I just knew, because no, it is exceptionally daunting in the beginning. There's a million things that you have to learn, and like you said, if you think about it that way, if you think about, oh my God, this is this sea of stuff that I have to wrap my head around, then you're never going to figure it out.
That's right.
So that's what happened in the beginning. Actually, is. So, dude, what's funny is when I had this original idea, I was just going to do like a remote podcast. I was going to do Zooms. I was just going to be like, because it was one of those things where I was like, I'll just try it just to tell myself that I did it.
Right.
I don't remember when it changed to in person. Anyway, long story short, I had like a period where I was starting to kick the idea around and hadn't bought any equipment, hadn't committed to anything. And one of the first things I did was I reached out to podcasts that I watched. So you were one of them. I called you. You didn't answer.
You called me.
I called you. Yeah. Yeah. I think
Did
you
have caller ID?
Yeah. I don't know.
Apparently not. Because I get like 40 spam calls a day. So
I know.
sorry.
That's a thing, dude. Somebody calls me now and I'm like, who the fuck is this? And they're like, oh, it's so-and-so.
I gotta make sure I don't have your number blocked.
Yeah. No, you're good. But yeah, no, you're good. So I called you. I called Danny and Shawn Ryan. And
you called Shawn Ryan?
Yeah, he didn't answer.
I was gonna say he probably called CIA
I think I
or something
texted
after
it.
that.
I don't know. Yeah,
like block this guy.
Oh, dude, yeah, we'll talk about Shawn. Because I think obviously I modeled my whole show off his. I think he's the GOAT. We can talk about that.
Incredible, bro.
Unreal, dude. Too. Unreal. So I think it was just the three of you guys, and then one more guy. I forget his name. He doesn't even do a podcast anymore, which is the funny part. Going back to your original point, like longevity is tough in this game.
Yeah, it is.
So I reached out to people, and Danny was the one person that answered, and I called him when he was at the gym. And dude, in retrospect, like it's kind of stupid. Like when people reach out to me now. And they're like, hey, like, how do I start something? Like, what do you recommend me doing? Like, I wouldn't recommend doing what I'm about to tell you, because like, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. But I called Danny and I was like, hey man, like this is who I am. Like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Like, I respect what you've done. You've built a cool brand, and like, one that I'd like to emulate. Would you be open to just like discussing kind of lessons learned, things that you wish you would have known before you started? And the reason that I say that I wouldn't recommend doing that is because like I basically just called this guy out of nowhere, like, and asked him for his time, and he doesn't know me, and I'm not providing any value to him in return. And like, again, I caveat that by saying like people want to help people, and like I'd love to help people. If you reach out to me like willy nilly, like with some stupid shit, but like that's one thing. But if you reached out to me and you were like, I'm super passionate about this, I've done my research on the front end, like that's a whole other thing. Anyway, so I hit Danny up, and he was like, he was just kind of caught off guard. He's like, dude, I'm at the gym. This is kind of weird. Like, it's so funny. Yeah, that's totally fair. He's like, let me think about it. I was like, dude, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. So
it's the phone. You know what? And I admire the balls. It's the phone call thing that's like, what the? Because first of all, I don't even check those because they're all spam. But secondly, like, and that's what kind of guy Danny is, though, too. Like, he thinks a lot like I do. If someone reaches out on email, 100%. Now I do have 93,000 unread emails, but the ones that I see, like I take to this day, like I do the calls. I'll do calls with someone, and they never have anything to offer. I don't expect that. It's just like, I never really did that on my way up, but I recognize so many people as the years go on, it gets more and more daunting to try to do this. So I'm like, I really wish like if I had like a buddy that, you know, could kind of tell me, like a mentor to kind of tell me some things to do, that would have been awesome for me. So I like to be that for other people. And obviously like Danny does too. And that's cool. He took the call.
Yeah. So yeah, we didn't really like get into it at all. And what happened was like, I was like, dude, thanks for your time. And then like probably I think a month went by, 2 months went by. And I just get like an email randomly from him. And he's like, I forget what it said. Like I probably have it somewhere, but he was like, hey man, like, who are you? Like, what's your story again? And so we start going back and forth on email. And long story short, like I ended up helping him with some guest outreach because I did sales. And so basically like I would hit people up for him and be like, hey, like this is the Danny Jones podcast. Like I'd like to essentially sell you on coming on the show. And looping back to my original point, like not everything has to be a value exchange, right. But I just, the principle that I'd recommend to people is that if you just provide value to people for long enough and don't ask for anything in return, most people are good people, and eventually they're going to be like, hey, what can I do for you? You know what I mean? So like if you're doing something for somebody, like Danny, to his credit, he offered to pay me, and you know I declined. I was like, dude, I don't want your money. Like I wanted to help him out because at the time, like I just, you know, I felt that was worth it, and yeah, so I started helping him out with that. And again, to the same point, eventually Danny was like, hey man, like what can I do for you? And I was like, well, funny you ask, like all this stuff that we can see on this table right now is exceptionally daunting to me. Like I don't know how, I have no media experience. I don't know how cameras work. I don't know how sound works. So I was like, I forget what I asked him. I was like, would it be okay if I like came out to Tampa and checked out your studio and just like, if you have a podcast coming up, I could see how the cameras are fed into your computer and, you know, the mics are wired into the recorder and like get an actual visual concept of how this works.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I have a podcast coming up whenever it was, May something. He's like, come out for that. And it was John. So, yeah, got there, watched him do his thing. It was super cool to be.
That's a good one to watch, too.
Oh, my gosh, man. Yeah, John is, you know, you've had him on a couple times. He's a fucking pro, dude. He's a pro. But yeah, long story short, they did the podcast. The three of us went to lunch afterwards. And then John's and my flight were like an hour apart. So we took an Uber to the airport and then waited for our flights together, had coffee, shot the shit. And I just told him, I was like, because he's like, why are you out here? And I was like, oh, I'm Danny's Make-A-Wish kid. But I told him, I was like, yeah.
That sounds great, though.
Yeah. He's like, oh, really? But I was like, yeah, dude, I'm starting one of these things up. And, you know, once I get it up and running, I'd love to have you. And he's like, cool, let's do it. And I was like, okay, that's another thing, man.
What a guy.
Dude, but this is like, this was my like send it moment. It wasn't as cool as yours when you just said fuck it and bought the equipment. But
I don't know. That's pretty cool. Sitting in an airport with John Kiriakou and being like, will you be my first guest? Like,
dude, it was so
gangster.
cool. But I also thought, I was like, what if he's just being polite? And like, what if I now go home and buy 10 grand worth of equipment, and then I call John Kiriakou and
he's like, fuck you.
Exactly. He's like, who are you? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and he didn't owe me anything, man. I didn't even have a platform, but yeah. So that was the moment that I sent it and bought everything and started doing test runs with shit and committed to it. And then I texted him in whatever it was, in the July or something, and he said yes, and he came out in September, and that was it.
Well, I mean, it's awesome, bro. But jokes aside, like having John as the first guy to sit down with, like you said, you've been thinking about doing the Zooms or whatever, but you hadn't done that. You hadn't sat down with anyone and anything previously before, right? Right. Before doing that?
Correct.
So the first time I sat down to do it, it was me talking to a camera, and my fucking cousin was sitting there going like this, he's thrown away his whole life. So like low bar, right? And then, for the first 86 episodes, the requirement was, can you breathe and, can you occasionally talk, and you can come over and do it. So I got to ease my way into it. But you start off out of the gate with a guy who was top 25 probably at CIA, the most prolific whistleblower at CIA in modern history, a geopolitical genius, a personality that is rarefied air, to say the least, someone who has been in the most dangerous situations and arrested some of the most dangerous people, someone who's had assassination, like all this shit.
Yeah.
And this is the first guy that you sit down with at your undisclosed studio location, wink, wink.
Yeah.
But, like, were you nervous about that at all?
Oh yeah. Oh fuck yeah, dude. I'm nervous now, bro. I still get nervous.
You still get nervous?
Yeah, less so. I mean, this is also different. This is the first time that I'm like talking a lot and on someone else's podcast, so it's a different sort of.
You're good at it. You should do it more.
We'll see. I honestly, man, I doubt it. I don't. Like I said, this was a different circumstance because it's you. But
thanks.
Yeah,
I'm the Make-A-Wish kid now.
And I'll do, dude. I feel bad. Randy's been. I was in a different state of mind. To be fair, I was going through some shit earlier in the year, and it wasn't the right time for me to talk.
Our boy Johnny Randy.
Yeah, he's the man. He's been super supportive of me. He's such a great dude. So like, I'll have to do his after.
John's the reason Deef's sitting here. He introduced me and Deef years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, John Rondi, we're talking about Johnny Drinks, also the host of the John Rondi podcast, but he's over the years, I have so many great friendships that started with him. In addition to like being great at what he does and being a really great guy, like he's also this super connector and knows how to match people well and who's going to get along with who, and you need people like that in your life, and you're lucky to have them when you do.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. But yeah, what was the original question? Sorry.
Yeah, we were talking about how you don't really go on the mic that much, but we were talking about, more importantly, the fact that your very first one is with fucking John Kiriakou.
Right. Yeah, I have an interesting short-term memory if you haven't noticed. But
yeah, it's all right. I'll keep the weave going.
Yeah, dude, there's so many things floating around in this head, a lot of stuff that I don't want to be, and you know how it is.
I understand that completely. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, dude, it was I was super nervous, man. That like you said, he's been on fucking Fox News. He's on your television, like Tucker Carlson, like super reputable guy. But at the same time, like in retrospect, he was the perfect first guest for me to have because for him, like you just keep your mouth shut and let him roll. And that's all you got to do. And like do your research on the front end to have good questions to ask him. And for me, man, like I over prepared and probably could have. So I actually watched that interview back because I just had him on again, and I'll be putting that out this Sunday. But so I watched that interview back, and there was a lot of threads that I would have pulled on if I was more comfortable as an interviewer being in the moment, and like because you have to practice active listening. Like you can. I think that like if you're starting a podcast, you can solve a lot of problems by preparation. Meaning like if you're not an established interviewer and you don't have that skill, the more you prepare, the more questions you'll have in the moment. So like again, long-winded way of saying, yeah, I would have done it a little differently, and I did. We had a great podcast this time around. But John is like, dude, you ask him a question and he just lets it rip. And that's the thing about these intelligence guys and special operations guys. If you go through and again, this is something I got from Shawn Ryan. If you just go through their career chronologically, like you can do a fucking 6-hour podcast and it just goes by before you know it. So, yeah, man.
There's a lot of estuaries with them, a lot of off ramps too. So you could be looking at someone's career from 1997 to 2019, right? And as you're kind of chronologically going through that story over whatever it is, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours, there's all these offshoots that happen of like breakdowns and them getting to take the experiences they had to put that perspective into the worldviews they have, which you do a great job of. But to your point, it's like with John, he's one of those guys that I'm out of respect, like borderline poking fun at the whole time because I know how he's gonna do it because it's just like exciting to watch. But he'll be getting on this little rant or whatever, and he'll be like, you know, so that's the problem with things like this. You know what? I'll give you an example.
I know.
And I'm like, yeah, all right, here it comes.
Oh my God,
10
dude.
minutes later, it's like,
Yeah. Oh.
you know, you're just mesmerized. Paul Rosalie's the best 30 to 60 second storyteller I've ever seen. John Kiriakou's the best long form storyteller I've ever personally seen in here.
I would agree. I don't, and that's funny. That's something I asked him. You'll get a kick out of this on this last podcast. I asked him. I was like, so basically, in every John Kiriakou video that you see on YouTube, the comments are like, "Oh my God, this guy's an amazing storyteller," because he is.
It's the John Kiriakou bot campaign. He pays for it.
Oh yeah, you never know.
I'm fucking with
Sputnik.
We love you, John.
Yeah, we do. We
Somewhere
fucking love
back
you.
at GRU, they're like, more comments in English.
Yeah. But I asked him. I was like, how can people like become better storytellers and be more articulate? And he goes, "Well, let me start with a story." So I figured you'd get a kick out of that. Yeah.
Yeah,
On brand.
Think about how he had to start his career, though. You know, and for people who haven't heard Dalton's John Kiriakou episodes, go check those out. He's been on my show, too. Like, the guy's prolific. He's been on Danny Jones' show a bunch, and now he's starting to go on a lot of different things. But he started off, like, almost the very front end of his CIA career as, like, the lead profiler of, at that point, a younger Saddam Hussein. And so his job is to take all these wild facts about this crazy dictator who shoots shotguns in the air and, you know, executes people, but runs this country with an iron fist that happens to have a lot of oil. His job is to take all that and be able to put it into something that is both, that is all of informative, entertaining, concise, to the point, and paints a picture for the president of the fucking United States when he might be making a war decision. So, like, to me, if I had to point to it, he definitely has natural talents that he's had since he was a kid. There's no doubt about that. There's a communication expertise there. But if I were guessing, he probably really, really developed that craft at that early point in his career when he had to take a lot of information and put it down into something that accomplished those 5 things.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy when you say it like that too. It's kind of the first I've thought of it like that. You know, the directorate of analysis at the CIA, those analysts, that's a very specific type of brain that I just can't wrap my own around. But the thing about John is he started in analysis and then he went to operations and then he became a case officer. So he's got both. He's
got everything, man. And he even saw management back at home too. You know what I mean? Like you want to talk about a guy who saw a lot of the major spectrums of CIA up close and personal. He's one of them.
He's the real deal, bro.
Yeah. But, you know, you talk about first being interested and listening to a lot of stuff. It's just funny that it goes this way. That's in like self-help and things like that. And you're like, yeah, so that got me into podcasts. And then eventually you're like, CIA, intelligence, like was that always something you were interested in, that world?
No, man. And like to be fair, I'm starting to come back to that too. Like I'll talk about this a little later, but like I want to start doing more content, excuse me, that helps people. So like that was something that occurred to me a little recently, and like the last episode I did was with a guy named Fredericks, who he was sexually abused as a child. He ended up killing the guy that abused him. It's a long story, but like for example, like we men, like we internalize things, and there's a lot of men that are in that situation. And if I could put something out that helps one person, that's a wonderful win for me, and that's one of the ones that I'm most proud of.
What is that story? I didn't. I saw a clip from that podcast, but I didn't see the podcast.
Yeah, it's super heavy. essentially, what's that?
We got time.
Yeah, no, but so his name is Clark Fredericks. He grew up in Jersey, actually, and he basically was abused by his close family friend who was like a pillar in the community in this town of Stillwater. Guy was a Boy Scout leader. He was a police officer, like an authority figure, which is so fucked up because it's like, you gonna run in the police? He is the police. That sort of thing. So it went on for a long time. And Clark, I think this is when he was like, before he was 10 years old, like young. And he ended up growing up. He became a drug addict, a gambling addict, spiraled as you would, internalizing this sort of trauma. And so Clark lived in the same town like all these years. And one day he saw this guy, Dennis Pegg, who abused him in a quick check. And Dennis had with him like another little boy. And the little boy called Dennis the name like a nickname that Dennis used to make Clark call him. And that just like sent Clark. And so what happened was he was deep in drugs and alcohol and spiraling at this time. He ended up driving to Dennis's house. And dude, this is the craziest part of that story. One of them to me, he hadn't seen the guy in however many years. And he drives to his house and kicks his front door open and he's got a knife in his hand. And Dennis Pegg is just sitting on his couch watching TV. And if somebody's in your fucking doorway at 9 p.m. with a knife in their hand, looking enraged, Dennis turns to the door and he goes, "Hey, how are you?" Like that is that abuser mentality is like, I fucking own you.
I'm way above you.
That is one of the craziest things. Anyway,
wow.
And that's what Clark said. He's like, dude, like, apologize. Like, say, listen, like, I'm sick. I presumably ruined your life and your psyche and your masculinity and all these effects on like, this is what I did to you. I'm sorry. Like, if there's any way, like, I can make it right, like, let's sit down, let's talk. Like, do that. That's what Clark said. But he goes, "Hey, how are you?" And Clark said that just like sent him, and he just rushed into his house and stabbed him to death.
Now, what happened after that, and how did this all come out? The real truth, obviously. What had happened? How long ago was this?
Oh gosh, dude, it wasn't that long ago. It was like probably, actually, he just got out. It was probably around 10 years ago, because he only got 5 years, which
it's probably 5 years too many.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I tried not to interject my own opinion, and because this is the thing, like I'll just say it, I'm not going to cry a tear over a dead pedophile. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
You know, I think that's the worst thing you can do on planet Earth. Like children, especially, man, they're just. So. But at the same time, if you kill your abuser, and again, a lot of victims have that thought cross their mind. If you kill them and you go to jail for it, they own you until the day you die. Like they're you know what I mean? Like if you go to jail for the rest of your life, like they own your entire life, and you can't let that happen. And that's part of the reason that I had him on, because he talks about now like how to deal with this, how to fix this trauma. You know what I mean?
How long has he been out of prison? You
just a couple years.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna have to watch that. That's
should have him on,
an
man.
incredible story. Yeah, I would like to. That's an incredible story. I mean, the fact that something like that, it's almost like the universe lining it up, though, for that outcome to happen, because he sees him with another little kid. He sees himself in that little kid, and then he hears the little kid use the same nickname, which is just like, that sends a shiver up my spine. It's like, I can only imagine you leave your body when that happens. It's like the Manchurian Candidate gets flipped on, and I get it, you know, where it's also a protection mode, because like I said, he sees himself in that little kid. He's like, so that's happening. And did that come out, I guess, like in court or in the process, that it was like this other kid admitted that he was being abused by the guy too? Did that ever come out?
The other kid. Oh no,
The little kid he
not
saw?
this little kid. But it did come out after the fact that like a lot of people had made accusations and that
Yeah.
sort of thing because Clark he'd never told anyone prior to that night.
Never told his parents, nothing?
His dad asked him. He sat him down. He's like, "Hey, I've been hearing rumors about this Dennis Peg guy. Like, did he ever touch you?" And like, dude, that's the thing too. Is like he explains this really well in the podcast, and he's like, these guys they rely on secrecy, and it's like he just drilled it into him from a young age, man. And like the way Dennis said to Clark when he was a kid, he's like, "Can you keep a secret? You know, because we can't be friends if you can't keep a secret." But this was in the very beginning of the grooming stage, and that's the other thing, bro. Is like these people, they have time. They're gonna take it step by step, and they're like methodical, and it's heavy and really. It's tough subject matter. It really is. But like these people are out there and they're doing these things. And like if you're a parent, you need to be able to protect your children. You need to be able to ask them the right questions. Because again, you're working against what's been planted in their head by that abuser. And that abuser knows all the psychological buttons to push. You know what I mean?
Hey guys, if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. It's a huge, huge help. Thank you.
So yeah, just it was a tough one, bro. But like again, the comments that I saw, and I'm proud of that one. And like again, that's why I said in the very beginning of that interview with him, I was like, if this helps one person, wonderful. And it seems like it did. So
yeah. I agree with you that that's like the worst thing. That and murder are the worst things you can do on earth. And in a lot of ways, when these sick people do that to little kids, they murder their souls, and they are never. To say they don't live a normal life would be a massive understatement. And it's like, do you even get to enjoy life or see what it's all about? But this has been something that I've learned about, unfortunately, on this podcast with other people, about how deep-rooted some of this is, unfortunately, in not only human history, but modern human history. I know you've probably come across it as well through some of your guests, but not even to single out places. I'm going to bring this to the whole world, but you look at countries in the Middle East, for example, it's open. They do it openly. They have terms for it. Yeah. There's terms for it in Pakistan. There's terms for it in Afghanistan. We've all heard the phrase from multiple different people on this show who served in different parts of the military at different times in Afghanistan. They have all talked about witnessing it and how the common refrain out there in the, obviously not, it's translated, but the refrain is, women are for kids and boys are for fun. And that's what they say. And I've had, I think it was Nick Irving talked about having to literally pull people off of kids. I believe it was Nick. Check that. It might have been Dale Comstock. I forget. But
I think Prince has talked about it on your show too.
Yeah. Eric Prince talked about it as well. I can't remember if that was on camera or off, but they all talk about it. And there's this thing that can happen where you get suspended in this idea that like, oh, that's a different culture. That's what they do there, as if there's not something weird and twisted in a percentage of the population of the human population. And the fact of the matter is that there is. And these people, we now have more awareness of it, thank God, within our own country, within America, that like these people walk among us, and it's not one or two. But it's also the scariest thing, because that's like the worst thing you can accuse someone of being. But there are people who, it's not always, unfortunately, just a regular stereotype of the creepy looking dude with the glasses who looks like he has no friends. There are a lot of quote unquote normal looking people who go normally about life, are married with fucking a wife and kids, who do this kind of thing. And I can tell you, I'm not a parent yet, but when I am, that's one of my ultimate fears. Like, who are you letting your kid around? And, if they play sports, or you just mentioned that guy was like a Boy Scout leader as well, which I would never let my fucking kids in the Boy Scouts. Sorry. But like, they call them the Weeblos for a reason. But
the what?
You never heard that? They're called the Weeblos? You never heard this?
I get the joke, but Jesus.
Pause. I'm just saying, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean.
It's on a serious note. It's terrifying. It's a terrifying thing.
Well, to your point, I mean, that's one of the things he said. He's like, if your kid's got a coach or and he prefaced it by saying it is a little bit of a cynical way to look at it, but he's like, if your kid's coach or their piano teacher or whoever it is taking an extreme interest in your child,
scary.
Right. That coupled with the fact that like they're always around children, they don't have peer friends and that sort of thing, like that's when you know something's weird.
Yeah, so, and hopefully there's some signs sometimes that really do make it obvious. Again, it's scary when there's ones that aren't. This guy was a cop too. Yeah. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But I don't know. That might be something. That's a good podcast idea. Having in like some sort of medical doctor, psychiatrist who studies this, I guess, whatever you call it, this trait that exists in some people and the different ways it forms, because it's not unitary. It's not like it's all the same. Oh, that's the DNA sequence. Otherwise, they'd probably be ready to eliminate that right now. There's experiences. There's things. Unfortunately, the saddest one is like when it happens to them and then they become that, which you hear about all the time. It's like it's a very disgusting, complicated, dark path to go down, but I think exploring that more to try to understand that could also be helpful. Like you said, if it helps one person or helps one parent to spot something, that could be huge.
Dude, I agree, and I think that a lot of when these guys get caught and go to court, they claim like it was done to me, and that's why I do this. But in my opinion, like that. If that's the case and you're an abuser, you know firsthand the effects that this has on a person's psyche and the way that it ruins someone's life. So for you then now to perpetuate that and do it to other children, knowing what it is that you're doing, it's even worse, in my opinion.
I think there's a good argument to be made there. I don't know. Unfortunately, it also gets into like people's, I guess, like in this case, primary intimate experiences, and so there's a different, in this case, sick normalcy that they're exposed to, and I use that word there, where it becomes, oh, that's, even if their mind's saying this isn't normal, they don't know how their body's reacting to that. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I know it's a complicated psychology. It's just, like one thing I know. Well, there's two things I know. Number one, the minute you have a kid, your whole life changes, your perspective changes, and you can't know that until you do it. I know that. The second thing that I at least have a good idea about from personal experience, as far as like observing other parents and my own parents and stuff like that over the years, is like I know with my kids, I don't want them to fear consequences for stuff that they're afraid of talking about. I don't want them to feel like, oh, if I bring this up with my dad, he might get mad at me and I might get in trouble. That's not to say I'm going to be like buddy with my kid. Like that's not what you want to do. You have to have that parent-child relationship and have that right dynamic. But like, I never want someone to fear being penalized for telling the truth or sharing thoughts, no matter how dark they might be. Because if I can't be like that safe space for them to do that, who the fuck is gonna be that? And what precedent does that set for things in the future that could happen to them that then they're afraid to come to me with? And I've just seen this over and over again where parents, and I'm not even blaming the parents as like bad people, but like they're so all over their kids or whatever that their kids get afraid to share things with them. And that's how things like this can happen.
Yeah, dude, I think that's a wonderful mindset to have and something that like is pretty cool that you picked up on, because I think that's so true. And especially when there's other subconscious roots and circumstances behind the things that your kids don't want to tell you, because God, man, with that one, like just as a man. So this is the thing. Do you know the book, The Trauma Keeps the Score, or The Body Keeps the Score by, what's his name? Bessel van der Kolk?
No.
So I did a little bit of like background on trauma before I had Clark on, just to, again, I want to understand and, you know, just be as empathetic as possible and that sort of thing.
That's awesome.
And the way he explained it was such a good example. And it was like, okay, so like if you and I are sitting in this podcast studio right now, and I just right now like reach across the studio and start swinging at you, right? You're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, this Dalton guy is out of his mind. I don't know. You might tell whoever, like, the weirdest thing happened. This guy's fucking crazy.
Right.
Whereas if you were a 6-year-old and I leaned across the table and start beating the crap out of you, you would say to yourself, what did I do wrong?
Yes.
You would say, oh, this is me. Like, I'm undesirable in some way. Like, there must have been some reason for Dalton to snap and do that. Right? As if you're an abuse victim, you can't internalize the fact that it's not your fault. So everything becomes immediately centered on yourself, and you start to build this resentment towards yourself. And it's all these like secondary and tertiary effects. Like the one that got me was like the effects on your masculinity, right? Because you start to think about like, okay, why didn't I fight back? Number one, like that's one part. Number two is like, did I like it? Am I homosexual? And that's a very common thing that comes out of it too, on like a man on boy type scenario. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, man, it was a fucking heavy one, to tell you the truth. But like, God, man, Clark, he fucking bared his soul in there, bro. Mm-hmm. And like, how'd
you find this guy?
His, somebody from Simon & Schuster, I think his publisher, reached out to me, and I think it was.
So he just wrote a book about the whole experience.
Yeah, he just came out with this book.
It's great.
And I was like, absolutely. You know, I think it's a perfect fit because it's got you know, just the right amount of like story kind of stuff that I would have on my show. And yeah, dude, like I said, I was you just had a moment earlier in the year where I was like, I need to start helping people a little more.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's, you know, storytelling's is a part of the niche in which you built your channel. So if there's a way to offload that into combining with helping people in some way, I think that's great. And I think also, like in my own experience, I don't know if you've seen this yet, don't let me speak for you, but, you know, you find that you bring in people to talk who are from this part of the world or do this thing, whatever job it might be. And then in the course of the conversation where we're going through their expertise or whatever, there's things that happen naturally where you realize that people who have developed a relationship with them listening to them, you know, for the last hour or whatever it's been, are now locked in on, you know, their credibility as a person such that they can then offer some advice unexpectedly on certain things from their own experiences, and it has a heavier effect because it's almost like they've established who they are to people. So you get that second order effect on a podcast, which also includes people at home being like, wow, that really helped me. And I love seeing those comments and stuff. I get those all the time with different people I bring on saying, oh, so-and-so, you know, I was really enjoying them talking about this, but it really hit me when they talked about this in my life, that this similar thing has happened. And you're like, whoa. Yeah. Like they were able to reach someone through that. It's very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. And yeah, dude, so it's funny. We went down a little estuary there, as you'd call it. But your original question was like, how the hell did I go from self-help to intelligence? Yeah. And I think that was just a byproduct of like getting exposed to the podcast scene. So like, for example, the first time Kiriakou was on Danny when he was rather portly. I don't know how many years ago that was.
That was pre-stomach surgery.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, dude, you look phenomenal.
He looks awesome now.
He looks great. Yeah. Yeah, so stuff like that, and then like stuff like I watched Jim Lawler on your show at your parents' house.
Oh yeah. Mad Dog Jim.
Yeah, and then of course Shawn, man. I think that like again, it's not that in my opinion like Shawn invented this military or intelligence interview. He didn't invent the genre.
He lived it.
Yes, but what I'm getting at is he started what he started, and he just did it way, way better than everybody else that was already in that niche. Yeah. So I got exposed to his show, and then I started, you know, hearing these stories from like former special operations guys, former, you know, intelligence officers, and like was just fucking hooked on it. I thought it was just, obviously I still think it's the coolest thing ever, bro. And it's,
why?
I think it's just this element of like taking a peek behind the curtain of these types of worlds that like we're not privy to because we don't have, you know, I think that's what it is. Just, and like, dude, fuck, man, especially like the special operations guys, first of all, and you don't not necessarily have to be special operations. It could have been, you know, conventional force, like whatever. But those stories that I started listening to, I was like, these are fucking incredible stories, man. They are the best of humanity. They're the worst of humanity. And like, again, man, the way Shawn set them up, like, in how good of an interviewer he is, like he would always get them, because that's a thing too, man. Like I had Brent Tucker on my show, who's a former Delta Force operator, and people seem to enjoy that one. And in my opinion, what sets an interview like that apart is not like the chest beating, like, oh, you know, I got on a helicopter at 3 a.m. under nods and, you know, smoked the sky. Like, yeah, fuck yeah, people want to hear those stories because they're awesome. I love hearing about terrorists getting smoked, obviously. But then there's the element of like the struggles that people can relate to, right? So like whether if it's a guy like that, like if they had some stuff manifest related to TBI or you know, their issues transitioning out of the military and finding a new purpose, and like those are the real struggles and the vulnerabilities that people can then relate to, and that's what sets it apart. And again, with Shawn, for example, that happened in every single fucking interview he did. Like every interview he put out, I was like, this is amazing. And like that's in my opinion how he built his brand. When I see that thumbnail, I was like, oh, it's gonna be a fucking banger, and I'm clicking on it.
Yeah, Shawn, the thing that is amazing in what he was able to do at the beginning is he had lived that from every spectrum of it. I mean, you're talking about a long-time Navy SEAL, tip of the spear kind of guy, ended up doing, you know, GRS at CIA, which, you know, that's intense surveillance and security around the world. And he was able to take all that understanding from his own little lens of it, right? Because you only go to the places you go. And then bring in all these other people who went to different places or were in the same place at a different time, doing different things, doing different jobs, and relate to them on that level. Even if he wasn't there at the same time they were and they weren't there at the same time he was, there's just something there that really not many other people could get. And, you know, you look at like the DJ Shipley one that he did, which is like an all-timer.
It's one of my top three.
Yeah, there's just even, you know what, even whacked Bin Laden guy, fucking Rob O'Neill. That guy's been on every podcast known to man. Yeah. I mean, I think he's been on fucking 40,000 podcasts. But the Shawn one, now I haven't watched all 40,000. I've probably watched 5 of them, maybe, right? Kind of the same thing on a lot of them. And I'm not blaming the podcast there. You know, he's kind of telling the story. But the Shawn one was by far the best one just because you were getting an extra layer from a guy who got it and understood. And I just think that's... like, you want to talk about building a brand and doing it in a genuine way. Because that's something that, like, you know, now Shawn's so big, people love attacking big people. But, like, you can never take that away from him. He built what he built by just taking his own life experiences and saying, I want to talk with cool people who might understand this and have their own understanding of it from their angle. And to your point, I agree. That's how, when I first found his show, maybe like 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, something like that, it was the same thought every time. It was like, all right, production's great. Number one, love that. Yeah. But secondly, you know, you're like, I'm not in the mood to listen to that when I'm in the mood to listen to Theo Vaughn. These are two very different things, right? Like, I'm in totally different moods with those. So if I'm over here in this mood, I'm clicking that with Shawn. And you know, it's cool that you drew a lot of inspiration from that too.
Oh, dude, big time. And I think, again, like I'm a huge fan. I always give him his flowers. Like when, you know, I guess, like I said, I don't really talk a ton on my podcast, but when I talk to people or even now, like, gosh, man, yeah, it was obviously the big three were him, Danny, and you that inspired me to get my stuff going. And I learned different things from the three of you guys. But what I will say about Shawn is, in my opinion, I think that he just like, I think that dude, this thing is hard to do at a high level across the board, right? There's a lot of different buckets if you have a podcast. There's, like you said, there's audio, video quality. There's marketing, there's shorts, there's clips, there's your studio setup, there's production quality, there's cutting a trailer, there's everything. And I think that he, out of anyone in the space, fills those buckets closest to the top across the board. Like if Rogan, Rogan is the godfather, bro. We wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for him. But in my opinion, I think Shawn is the GOAT. So yeah, I think that it did. Like, I obviously have taken a ton of inspiration from him, and yeah, I still do. Obviously,
yeah. What was cool with him is he's not a talker. I think that's what makes him great at his job. He gets other people going. And Shawn is a very, very smart guy. There's a slight delay with him talking because he had, I don't know, he had like fucking 10 TBIs or something.
Oh, really?
And yeah. I mean, the guy saw so much combat or whatever. So like I picked up on that, especially when I was with him. I was like, okay, like, don't go all New Jersey on him the whole time. You know what I mean? Like that's a little much. But it takes a little while to get him going. But man, once he gets going and you really get there on him, first of all, breaking down analytically all his experiences from like a strategy perspective, from a skills perspective, from a military perspective, all this stuff that's like listening to like a legendary general talk. And then to your point, when he starts getting to the how it all made him feel and how it all made him feel later when perspectives changed and he could think back on it. I don't know. That was really special for me to hear because it's like, damn, this guy is able to always have all these other people on who talk about this, but now you hear it from the horse's mouth and you realize like, hey, you put him up against any of the incredible stories he's had on, he's right there with him himself, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, dude. I mean, look at what he's done with his show and his marketing. You can't be an idiot to do that. Like as an entrepreneur, all you do is make decisions all day, especially at a scale like his, I would imagine. Yeah. That's probably all he does is make decisions. And like, I think he's pretty fucking spot on with his accuracy. Like he makes a lot of good decisions. Anyway, that was a great podcast when you
Thank you.
When you had him on. I really
I do want to give 2 points of credit there. Number one, 100% on Shawn. And another piece of credit on Shawn is the guy who's like, this looks like the broad area we need to do something, and then he empowers people to do it. And so the second point of credit, I think, and Shawn's given this as well over the years, is a guy he's worked with for a long time. Kemba Williams is he's a genius. I've talked with Kemba now for the last 3 years. Like, that dude is looking at fucking everything and saying like, okay, this works. Now, how do we do something that's ours that can accomplish that? And Shawn, and there's a lot of guys on Shawn's team I don't know now because he's got a bigger team, but Shawn has always empowered people to say like, okay, here's the check boxes I want to make sure we do. You go do it. And I think that's also like, that's a really good leadership trait. That's probably something he developed watching the good versions of that and the bad versions of that in the military and trying to take the good ones and bring it back to his business. But, the guy's done whatever it is, like 250 episodes or something, which in the context of like Joe Rogan is like not many compared to that, but was able to have his show be one of the biggest in the world, I'd say by, like episode 60, which is like kind of unheard of. And it goes to show like all that back end stuff you talk about and then being able to do it correctly. It adds up.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one too, man. Just like, I think that's a superpower is that delegation that you talk about. And like, obviously you have to find the right people and people that you trust, but like, this is your baby, So you're very hesitant to hand the keys over to somebody and but you can't do it all yourself forever if you want to.
That's been the hardest thing for me. I don't know about you. But like,
I still fucking do it all myself. So
yeah, I waited too long to start handing things off. But when you start moving faster too, you end up not having a choice on that. And like, have you burned out at all?
Yes, but not. I go through kind of peaks and troughs, but like I haven't burned out because of the podcast. I've burned out because I haven't managed my time properly to do the right things for myself.
What does that mean?
Meaning, like, I had, Montana or Wyoming on my mind over the past 2 years and never fucking pulled the trigger on it until a couple months ago. So now I make a point to do that for 3 days every month, every 2 months. And like that gives me more juice moving forward. Or like, I don't know if, I work 7 days a week. I don't really take a day off. I'm sure you're the exact same. But like, we don't feel that we're entitled to these sorts of things.
That's right.
And like, sometimes our brains and our bodies have their own idea of what they need to move forward. And like, you feel like you're in the driver's seat and with the joystick in your hand, but like, sometimes you need to just like feed the machine what it needs. And the machine really is my fucking brain, bro. Like, that's, it's complicated. And like, I've been doing things more for myself, I'll say.
Yeah.
And I think that again, that 3 days in Montana, that's 3 days that I'm not working, but that'll get me, back to 120% when I get back. So it pays itself off immediately.
Yeah, there's a strange balance there for sure. Like, and I think everyone's got to find that themselves. It's something I've had to focus on more over the past year. I still, I don't do many of those. I should probably do some more, but it's also like, that's the other thing about adding on people too. You feel an added sense of responsibility as well, because now you're paying other people's income, and you want to make sure you can keep doing that because they're relying on you. And I like that pressure. I think it's a really cool thing, but I'm still trying to navigate how I let that impact my work-life balance, and I can't say that I've figured that out perfectly yet at all.
It's gosh, dude, I was just at my parents' house last night, and I was talking to my mom about this, and I think you can probably relate to this. When you are obsessed with something, and like, dude, this is all I think about from the moment that I wake up to the moment that I go to sleep. It's all I'm fucking obsessed with it. But when you care that deeply about something, you take from other buckets and you neglect other buckets, being social life, romantic relationships, time with your family. And like, I'm not complaining. This is the life that I've chosen, and I fucking love it. I don't plan on changing it. But my only point is like, I'm still working out what the balance is. I'm still working out how often I'm going to go see my family, because they may not be around forever. But like, there's no handbook on it, bro. And like, that's, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, the balance between being present and also prioritizing the things that are right in front of you is a tough one for sure. And I think about that a lot. I try not to live my life in fear of like, well, what if they're not here or whatever? But I do try to think about like, who am I seeing and how much are my 2 feet on the ground when I'm doing that? Even like when my grandpa was getting sick, and this was months ago. He ended up dying recently, but long before that, we thought he was going to die. Like, there was a point for 2 weeks where I'm like, you know what? I do have a fuck ton to do, and if it doesn't happen, the bills don't get paid this month, so I can't stop work, just like all my cousins couldn't either, by the way. But what I can do is get my workout in the morning, drive down there, work right next to him, take some time off, spend a little time with him, come back at night and see if I can do it the next day too. And like, thinking back on that now, it's a special thing, because I did that for like 12 to 14. There was like a 15-day period where I did it like 11 or 12 times. And now it's like, I'm at peace with the fact that he did finally go and whatever. And this is someone I spent a remarkable amount of time with in my life. And yet, even during my busiest years, where I was really going after it and putting my life on pause, I had time to spend with him. That's a big thing with me. I feel like I'm at a loss already if I say I'm making time to do things. If I'm making time, it's like there's effort that has to be there. And I get that. It's a semantics thing. But like, you have to also have time. And that is why, by the way, you doing what you're doing now at this point, and I'm in the same boat as you are in a lot of ways. It's like, this is when we don't have wives, we don't have kids at this point, this is the last time we can have this amount of focus on something like this, because I will never be an absentee dad or an absentee husband or something like that, because I'm this asshole that's working 7 days a week till I die. That's not happening. But what I can do is, if I'm entering an extremely competitive space, a very hard business, something that very few people make, and I have to dedicate an inordinate amount of time, I'm going to take the time that I have when I have it to maximize it, so that I can pay for the time later where I don't have to be that guy.
1,000%. And you know what's funny? That's something that I still think about from time to time is I don't remember whose podcast it was, but it was Bustamante on somebody's podcast. Tough to nail it down. He's done quite a few. Yeah. But he mentioned it was something offhanded about you, and it was like somebody paid you a compliment about the podcast, and Bustamante said something along the. He's like, yeah, well, you know, he's young, single, and obsessed. And I was like, I don't know why that comes back to me from time to time, but to your point about this is the fucking time, you know, like it doesn't get any easier. But I wanted to ask you, was there anything that stands out that like you learned from your grandfather's passing just recently?
Oof.
Learned about life, maybe?
That's a great question. I'm still processing it because we're talking and we just buried him a week ago. The guy was my hero and someone who I considered a best friend, who lived for 90 years. It's a great life. It's not like, you know, this is a tragic at age 45 death or something like that. So I'm very grateful for that. I had him to this point in my life for many, many years, and he was with it for the first 89 years, which is great.
That's wonderful.
You know, and I could still have conversations with him up until about a month ago. I'd say that's all a W when you look at it. Yeah. But there's still a finality of someone being gone. So there's a lot of lessons. One, there's a physical lesson, and this is something I've learned over the last few years. I'm very into fitness. I got sick there for a few years, so I couldn't do it. I lost my whole body, lost all my health, and now the last 2 years I've invested like crazy, which was a promise I made myself, in getting better and being able to get back in the gym and do what I do. But I have turned that up times 5 because I watched my grandparents suddenly get very old over the past few years, and there is nothing that takes away human dignity more than extreme aging. And just seeing those things, and someone who can't move around, can't take a shit on their own, I never ever want to be like that. That's number one. So that's a lighter one. But you know, the other thing, I don't really know if this answers your question, but it was just a really strange finality, is when his wife died, my grandmother died a couple years ago. That happened very quickly, and it was devastating. And you know, I have huge families on both sides. This side has 18 cousins, 18 niece and nephew cousins. Like, I have 12 aunts and uncles. Like, it's a big family, and it was very sad. But a couple days after the funeral, I felt really at peace with it. And I don't want to be callous and be like, oh, I was over it. But I felt so at peace with it. And it was because she had lived an amazing life, and then right at the end, like, got dementia. And she died before that was going to get bad, right? So she died with her dignity in a lot of ways. And so I was at peace with that. But when we were putting my grandfather's casket into the ground, I had this overwhelming, just incredible sadness fall over me, because we're putting him in the ground right next to where she is. I've been to this gravesite many times since then. But I realized, oh shit, I didn't get over her death in a couple days or something like that. It was more that there was a piece of her that was still here because he was here. And now he's not. Fuck. And just like that, an entire generation's gone. And you can never get it back. You can't have that conversation with them. You can't get their advice. And like, my mom was really breaking my heart when she was like, you know, it's like I lost my North Star. And I was like, God damn, you know? So I think there is something to be said about that. I don't have any regrets about time spent. I spent a lot of time with them over all those years. I was extremely close with them. So that whole part I'm at peace with. But the idea that I can't pick up the phone and shoot the shit with him, or, you know, get that reassurance or make him proud, you know, when he's not here, that part sucks. And I know everyone out there listening, we're all human beings. We've all dealt with this stuff. I'm lucky I'm talking about a grandparent dealing with it. I know there's a lot of people listening who are young and they had a parent die young, or even worse, they had a kid die or something like that. So it's like, in the grand scheme of things, been a really, really lucky guy, but you know, every loss hurts.
Were you there when he passed?
I was there. I mean, the guy wouldn't die. We said goodbye. we said goodbye like 50 fucking times over the last year. Yeah, so I was there. He passed on a Wednesday. The dude.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
No,
it's a little levity,
no,
you know? People don't understand this,
it's
but
a little
I think
bit
you
funny.
do.
Yeah, it's a little bit like this part is just like typical, you know, grandpa. Like he finally had a stroke on like a Friday morning, and now couldn't talk, couldn't move, and it was like, it's time. Like this is no. It was already no way to live because he couldn't move around himself and all that. But now it's like he literally is bedridden. So. He wasn't asking for food and water, so it's like, this is supposed to happen pretty fast. Motherfucker lived 6 days without food and water. So I was there that whole weekend, Saturday and Sunday, sitting with him, talking with him. And the last time I saw him on Sunday, I was like disappointed for him that when I saw him on Saturday and came back Sunday, he was still there because I'm like, he's in pain. Yeah. You're like, this is horrible for him. But I'm sitting with him there Sunday, and I said goodbye, and I knew I had to come up to do work because my aunt and uncle, they're nurse and doctor. They're like, this could go on for weeks. I don't know. But I had a feeling that was going to be the last time I saw him, and I was so at peace with it at that point. So I was not there when he died like that Wednesday. But I had said everything I needed to say many times over. So I'm lucky I had that. There's a lot of people who don't get that. And, you know, I do think there's something in the end of life, like he had that last gasp kind of thing that happens, you know, the day before you die, where suddenly you get like this wind of energy. And I know, like, my mom was there for that. I know that was really special for him and some of his kids who were there. And, you know, the end of life is a very strange thing, man. Yeah. You know, how do you like, you have a lot of guys on who lost dudes on the battlefield in their prime, you know, get cut down out of nowhere. You know, one morning you're having breakfast, shooting the shit together. That afternoon, you're taking someone off the field in a body bag. How do you like comprehend that when guys like you and me haven't lived that at all?
I think the main thing, man, is like, first of all, we're not going to comprehend that. We'll never be in that situation because they were like, they did it. So, you know, you and I didn't have to. And that's why we love them. But in a situation like that, bro, like, so Brent Tucker, who I had on, he told a story about his friend Chris Robinson, who was one of his. This is when Brent was a Green Beret before he went to the unit. His best friend Chris Robinson ended up. I forget the actual circumstances of how he got killed, but he picked up Chris's body and carried it to the helicopter. And like, that's your fucking best friend, man. And so like, I'll never understand that, but what I can do is just sit across from him, like, as a human, and just sit with him as a human being. Like that's all I can do. But again, like, this goes back to what we were talking about these stories being the best and the worst of humanity. Like, where the fuck else are you going to hear a story like that? Gosh, yeah. So I don't know, but there is something, and the reason I ask that is because there's something that I think that you can learn or conceptualize about life by watching somebody take their last breath. And like, for me, it was the first time it was my grandmother. We watched. I was in the hospital when she passed. And again, bro, like, first of all, my grandfather, I wasn't. So the way I think of it is like, you weren't meant to be there when he passed for whatever reason, and that's fine. Like, that kind of just is what it is. But yeah, man, just watching somebody, like, what really set that one home for me is like, this person is at the end of their cycle. You know what I mean? And I don't know how to explain it or articulate it properly, but it really just hammered home to me the fact that, like, we're all just kind of staggered in this life. Like, that'll be me one day. And like, she was once a baby. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it sounds weird when I'm saying it that way, but just watching someone labor for breath and then just take their very last one, and then just looking at myself like a healthy young man, it puts shit in perspective. But yeah, back to your original point about that, man. It's tough to conceptualize, and we think about it a lot now, being that people are more and more open about or talking about why we were there in the first place. So I don't know. I don't know how to think about it other than just like let people come in and tell their stories and just listen.
Keeps those people alive too.
Exactly.
Among, you know what I mean? Because
it's a good point.
One of the things that really bothers me about these wars is the guys who are sent there aren't the ones making those decisions.
Yeah.
And you see the consequences that happen that they have to live through. And then the ones who come home, they survive. But that number on a page, which is what we make it on the news back here, such and such number of soldiers died in Iraq. It's a number on a page. That number on a page includes people that they went to war with. That literally, like figuratively, literally the whole thing. And I think it's really special when a show like yours can shine a light on that. And, that guy, I'm going to make up a name right now, but, Lieutenant Dan Campbell, who died in this battle that no one even knew about, that was actually fucking crazy. And here were the consequences of what happened there. You can understand what he was about, who he was, who he left behind. The guy who's talking in front of you, who's doing his best to keep it together and also carried forward that dude's legacy and not let people forget, because that's a great image you give about when you watch someone leave this earth, especially when they're older too. And it's like, wow, they've lived a really long time. They leave, and then, 5 minutes goes by, 10 minutes go by, people leave the room. You start working on the obituary.
Yeah.
You go back, you answer some emails that you missed from work while you were waiting for that to happen. You bury them 5 days later. You go, you throw a few flowers on the casket. The gravedigger's there wearing like a Led Zeppelin t-shirt, says thanks. You fucking go and eat some burgers somewhere while they're getting buried, and life goes on. And I really disappoint myself sometimes, like, where I'm like, there's shit that I'll get afraid of or fear the outcome of or whatever, and all these things and the repercussions. And obviously I don't do it in here because I don't have a choice. I got to do my business here. I fail to remember the fact that one day I'm just going to be dead, whenever that is. And 5 minutes later, life is going to go on. Hopefully I left the world a better place than it was when I got here, but I'm just one of 8 billion, and we all meet the same end. It's a heavy thing, but it's at the end of the day, it's a very simple ending.
I know. Yeah. Dude, the life goes on thing, like that, the finality of death, I think that's the thing that bugs me out the most at this stage of my life is, gosh, man, like, you know Alex Hormozi, I'm sure.
Sure.
He's got a great lens about this, about how you can be, I don't know, like some president of some country, somebody really important that in theory moves mountains in history. And then a couple years later, nobody gives a shit about you anymore. So if nobody cares about that person, then the average person, I don't know, man. And it's not that like everybody needs to, move mountains with their time on Earth and be immortalized and remembered. I think it's really cool what you and I do, because hopefully if YouTube is around forever, that shit will be on the internet forever. So I guess in some way that is you and I sticking around, which is cool to me.
Strange, right? There's like a record that we were here.
Yeah.
Visually.
Hopefully, if, OpenAI doesn't just consume the world and burn it to the ground. But, yeah, man, that one freaks me out. It's one that I'm still wrapping my head around, the life goes on thing.
What do you think happens when we die?
As far as I can tell, just go back to sleep. But there's things that, like, I don't know, there's weird, unexplainable things that happen and, after people are gone and you get weird messages from them. And I know, like, I do believe in some of the woo-woo type stuff. Not exactly that, but I think the eye sees what it wants. But I don't know, man. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. That is how I try to live my life. I do think that it all came from somewhere, for sure. I think something created this. How many layers away that is, I have no idea. Are any of the religions right, or are they all completely wrong? I don't know. And I don't want to say I don't care. That'd be a little callous to say, but like I try to control what I can control, which is I'm here for however long I'm here, which I don't control what that is. But while I am here, I want to do good wherever I can, help people out wherever I can, and know that one day in some way to something, I'm going to have to answer for that. So I better hope I did that to the best level that I can. But as far as what happens when those eyes shut, yeah, I mean, maybe it's exactly what you say. You just go back to sleep. I don't know. It's a very weird thing to think about. I remember when my uncle died when I was like 16. I was talking with one of my older cousins about it. It was like twice my age. And they were a really, really smart person. And they're like, yeah, death never gets clearer. They were literally twice my age at the time. So I'm really looking up to this person. And that always stuck with me. Because I'm like, they don't have anything more figured out than I do. And they had lived a crazy life to that point. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's one of those things that with age comes wisdom. I think it's too unexplainable. And I think some of the stories about people who passed over and came back are really cool. You know, maybe some of that really is true. I'm open to that. But who the fuck knows, man? You know?
Yeah, well, I think the only thing you can do is live a life so that when that time comes or you feel like it's approaching, if you're lucky enough to grow old, then you're as content with it as you could be without seeing what's behind the curtain.
Hell yeah, man. Now, you keep bringing up Brent Tucker, by the way.
Yeah.
So he's all over the internet because he's got that anti-hero podcast and all that. Did he have that when you had him on? Did he already have that?
Yes, but so it was started by his co-host, and Brent became a permanent host on it at some point. And I believe, yes, he did have it when I had him on.
Okay. How did you first connect with him?
Dude, I fucking love that guy. I really do. How I first connected with him is he was my second episode, so after John. And again, like we'll talk about John and like the character of some of these people to show up and take a flight and leave their families to go on a platform that I probably had like 7,000 subs when Brent came on. But I connected with him just by reaching out to him and asking him to come on the show because I'd seen him on some other stuff, maybe Team House. What the heck else was he on that I saw him on? And I was like, this guy is, I need to have him on. So yeah, that's how we met. But great dude.
And you did the whole. I like that model sometimes where it's like, you know, you're trying to do 3-hour episodes or something like that, but guy keeps going, you're not going to stop him. So that was a couple when you put that out, which was really good because it gives people a chance to see different parts of their story too if they're more interested in that or another. But you know, that's another one. I mean, that's your second podcast. You start with John Kiriakou, then you go to a guy who was tip of the fucking spear.
Yeah.
You know, either get mowed down or mow down.
Mow down.
Yeah. Yeah, well, obviously we know what side he fell on, but like that's pretty heavy. You're jumping right the fuck in there once again.
Yeah, what I will say about that is that was I think he'd be okay with me saying this, and like I hope people don't take this the wrong way, but that was a different type of nerves when I sat across from him because like, you know, I don't know, bro. That's just like he's done a lot. And just
for people out there who aren't familiar with his story, can you?
Yeah, so he was a former Delta Force operator, and for I'm sure people are familiar that watch your show, but if they aren't, the Delta Force is the Army's Tier 1 Special Missions Unit. So it is, like you say, the very tip of the spear. Those are the guys that are, you know, it's part of Joint Special Operations Command with SEAL Team 6. Those are the guys that are doing the fucking Bin Laden raid. So they're not going after Ahmed and flip flops with a ancient Russian pistol.
Why's it got to be Ahmed?
Yeah. That's dude, because John says Ahmed Schmuckmed a lot. I think it's so funny.
All right.
they're going after the most hardcore guys with fortified positions, up in valleys, really hard targets, like really, really terrible people. Like purse snatchers don't get on their radar. So so that's who Brent is. He was a Green Beret, which is Army Special Forces for I forget how many years, and then he went to the unit for I think 10 years, and he retired in 2018, 2020, something like that. But yeah, that's who he is, and fucking great dude, bro. Like he is like exactly. I think that's one of the biggest compliments you can pay somebody in this space is like he's exactly who he is off camera, on camera. And like if you watch Anti-Hero, they do this, which I think is a cool format. They do this Thursday Night Live thing where they just drink beers and shoot the shit. And like he's that guy off camera, just super chill, really easygoing, mellow. But yeah,
didn't you just go shooting with him too?
Oh God, dude, that
was that like?
Oh, that was so much fun.
Where was that?
Okay, so Brent is like we've kept in touch after the podcast because like I genuinely like him as a friend, and like I'm sure. How do I say this? You've had a lot of people in here, and if you were in their city or if they were here, you wouldn't maybe necessarily reach out to all of them to have dinner.
Not all of them.
And not to say that they're not fun to hang out with.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I haven't gotten to hang out with all my guests like I have like a John or a Brent or whatever. Anyway, so Brent was here and he was training the effectively the NYPD SWAT team. And so they're called ESU, which is Emergency Services Unit, and like it's a specific team of that unit. The A team is what they're called, apprehension team. And they basically, you know, if there was tiers in the NYPD, they do like the most high risk warrants, right? Like the really, really hardcore drug dealers, like serve them warrants. They do hostage rescue as part of their charter, I believe. So Brent was here teaching them CQB, which is close quarters battle. And what Brent does is he's got a company called First Responders Coffee Company, and they donate a portion of, not even proceeds, bro, of the money that they make. So it might not even be profit. They donate to first responder causes. And one of the things that he does is he gives this training to law enforcement for free. They didn't even pay for his flights or hotels or Airbnbs.
Wow.
And like, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, these are the kind of people. Like these guys, these are the excellent people. Anyway, so he was here doing that in New York, and so we got dinner. And when I met him, he brought two of the guys from the team with him. So it was the four of us who went to Quality Meats. Have you ever been there? Uptown by Central Park?
No.
Deep's definitely been there. I know he's been there.
Yeah, I've never been.
I'm just fucking with it. It was good. Anyway, so it was the four of us. We had dinner, had a great time, had some cigars after dinner. And at one point, one of the guys was like, what the fuck did he say? He's like, he was talking to the other guy, and I don't know if I should say their names. Like I think they're great guys. I would love to.
Yeah, stay the name off. That's fine.
Yeah. So at one point, one of them was like to the other one, he's like, oh, did you text so and so? Like we need a role player for tomorrow. And like jokingly, I just look at him. I was like, oh, you need somebody to come get shot with some sim rounds or something? And they were like. And they look at each other like, actually, yeah, if you want. And I was like, fuck yeah, I would love that.
Oh, so you wanted to get shot with sim rounds?
Well, so what a role player is like...
Is that like a fetish?
Yeah. No.
Okay.
It does hurt. I'm not into pain.
There's a couple zip ties there if you...
Yeah, no, I'm all set. I'll leave that to you and fucking, what's his name? Tommy G's channel, right?
Yeah, we got Andy back the other day.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
So basically what it was they have a whole facility. They have like a shoot house, which for people that haven't seen one, it was the first time I was in one. It's this kind of modular setup where you can configure doors in a certain way. Like they're like kind of like wood panels that you can slide around, essentially so that you can change the layout of a room every time a team does a run through of it. And they got, they make it look like an apartment. They'll have like a fucking refrigerator or a couch, different furniture types. And so what the point of it is for teams to do CQB in, right? They'll make entry however it is, and they set up scenarios for these teams to then deal with. So there might be a hostage taker, there might be an active shooter, and that was what I did. I was an active shooter role player. And dude, so the first thing, like there is, again, I don't know, like people for some reason love this, like who's better, Delta Force or SEAL Team 6. They fucking love that.
Oh, they love those arguments.
So
It's so funny.
My only point is, I don't know who's better, but let's say it's Delta Force for the sake of argument. Delta Force is the very best in the world at CQB. So just being a part of a classroom training, having Brent teach these guys something was like, I don't know, bro. It's like having an NBA player explain to you like how to shoot a basketball. Like it's just cool, even if you're into it or if you're not. Anyway, so I go there, and my job, like I said, was to be an active shooter role player. So I basically they give you like, it was like a full face mask, like a long coat, and they gave me it was a Glock 19, and it was actually like a real Glock, but it was converted for simunitions. So it's got like a blue slide on it. If you ever see those like trainings, or like a blue bolt in an AR.
Can we pull that up, Joe? Try to see that. What would you type in for that?
Just type in like simunition Glock or simunition rifle. I'm sure you've seen it, and it's basically like what a sim round is it's like a high speed paint round, so that you can do force on force training safely. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So, and essentially, like the actual round, like if you've gun shooting, you've held like a 9mm round or something. Yeah. It's a real round, and it's got a primer. Where like, because the gun is the exact same, so when you pull the trigger, the firing pin hits the primer, and then I guess there's gunpowder between that and the paint round, so it's like a real round, and it feels like very real. So they gave me one of those, and Brent like set up this scenario where like I was a barricaded shooter in a room, and like I won't go into the actual details because I don't want to like any of their like tactics and what they do, but their job was to basically like, so he was like okay. How do I explain this? It was like I was barricaded and there was an open door. And he's like, as soon as you start either seeing them come down the hallway or hear them get close enough, just start cracking some rounds off through the door. And then it was on, and it was their job to just unfuck the situation. And
it's on. You got a bunch of Delta Force psychos coming at you.
Well, no, not the unit. This was the NYPD guys.
Whatever.
But
trained by the Delta Force guys, close enough.
Yeah. And what I'll add is that, like, there's no sense in training for compliance. So my job was to be non-compliant.
Oh, that's right. So you got them yelling at you.
There's no sense in
fuck yourself. Get out the door.
No, they're very professional. But I said that. Brent's like, you can ad-lib it, say whatever you want.
You throw an accent on?
Dude, oh my God. So they'll start talking to you. Obviously, they want to defuse first. They don't want to kill an active shooter if they don't have to.
Yeah.
So the first
that's
team,
what they tell you.
Well, no. These guys are super professional. They're not,
I'm fucking with your dog.
I know, but they're such awesome dudes. I can't let you have that one.
That's my job, to be a jokester.
Yeah, fair enough. But so yeah, dude, they're the first team. They started talking to me. They're like, "Hey, man, like, what's your name?" And I was like, "Go fuck yourself." And that was what I said. And then I ended up playing it out. And obviously, their job was to just shoot me. So and we got to do that a couple different runs, a couple different scenarios. But what's crazy is actually, so this was a 2-day thing. On the first day, we were in. Okay, so that second day they had like an abandoned school. Okay, so which is interesting. I probably have some sort of asbestos-related fucking life shortening after that one. But so the first day was in their actual like shoot house, that modular room setup, and like so they start running through, and Brent was like instructing and kind of watching them run through and that sort of thing. As like we were just getting started, somebody comes in and they're like, "Yo, everybody out." So like the entire team leaves. And do you remember when? Gosh, I don't know if it was like a month ago, the shooter at
at Blackstone.
Yes. They all dipped and responded to that.
No shit, that was going on right then.
Yes. So, and that's part of the deal, man. That's what they do. Those guys, what I'll say is, like, from what I got from them, they cover the whole city, bro. Every borough. And they're spread very thin. And so that was that. So they dipped on the first day, and then we ended up coming back the second day to do it.
That's real world. You get to see that happen. Think about how good those guys got to be. Like, we talk about like police forces or whatever. There's dudes, like there's certain police forces. You're New York City. Like, yeah, we see the guys directing traffic out there. There's another segment of them that better be good at what they do, because look at all that can go wrong in that little place right there. Nothing little about it. It's crazy.
And what I'll say about these guys, man, like I always had a respect for what the people that come on my show do, as I'm sure you do as well.
Oh, yeah.
But being able to see it firsthand, not firsthand, you know, but like, bro, I'm telling you, they make it feel real. They want training to feel real. They're not fucking around. Like it's for all intents and purposes real. And so what those guys do is they don't know what's on the other side of that door. And they gotta, dude, like the fucking Uvalde one, like that. Oh God, man, that I cry every time I see a body cam video of something like that. It absolutely breaks my heart. But those guys, and you know what pisses me off too, like when being a police officer is a fucking thankless job, and people shit on them, and they want to take their money away, and they don't want them to train, and they want them to pay for their own ammo. Those guys fucking run into that room when they don't know what's on the other side of the wall to save people's lives that they don't know.
Yeah.
And like, dude, I'm telling you, when I'm like, when I was in there, like it just felt real. And I also felt what it was like for them. I'm like, I set this position up. Like I have the advantage. They're in this situation, not at like I shot a couple of them. You know, like in the leg or something when you know, but like that's real, bro. That's it for all intents and purposes. That's a real fucking 9mm round in their leg in the real world.
Dude, even below what you did there. I mean, that's like a full-blown simulation. But even, I mean, I know you go to gun ranges a lot. Like even when you go to a range and you're handed a weapon of death, which is what it is, and you have to move with it a little bit to shoot a fucking cardboard.
Yeah.
Or a metal plate or something. And you think of all the steps, and every little, especially if you're working with, you know, like an AR-15 or something like that. Every little thing you have to do just to do one shot and then be able to move to the next one. I understand that these guys, they train over and over and over again. So a lot of that becomes like breathing, but there's still so much that goes into that. And then a gravity of like, if this bullet leaves this arsenal, it leaves this holster, like some shit could happen. I don't know what's on the other side of that. You know, who dies, whether they deserve to or not. You know, you're responding to a situation. Your adrenaline is jacked. Mm-hmm. Like, it's impossible to simulate what you can do. Now, when we've seen videos of like a cop, someone fucking ran 100 feet away and then they just like shoot him in the back. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I'm with you. That's you can't do that. But like when someone's coming at you with a weapon or something like that and you have 0.25 seconds to respond to that, like what the fuck do you think is going to happen, people? You think they're going to stand there and be like, "Oh, you look safe." No. It's not how it works. And I agree. That part of it's thankless for sure.
Dude, like, have you ever heard an AR-15 indoors with no ear protection on?
No.
It's really scary, and especially if you're not expecting it. So, like, again, that's going back to the fucking school shooting problem that, you know, we seem to have in this country. Like, it is terrifying, bro. And
it's very scary.
Like you said, you can train for it, but until you're in that situation that you've never seen, and it's God, I have all the respect in the world for those guys and what they do, and I'm so happy that there's people like Brent and people like that, the apprehension team, that are willing to do that, because we fucking need them, and nobody's ever going to tell me otherwise.
Yeah, we also have to ask some questions about things like that, though, that are beyond the actual response and what goes into that, which absolutely, that's a critical part. But, you know, why these things happen. And people in the past, it's been quieter. I'll give credit where it's due. It's been quieter on this front of the blame. In the past, it's just been, well, it's guns. Okay, yeah, I don't think a 17-year-old should be getting their hands on an AR-15. I could agree with that. But like when you're going to start to try to legislate, quote unquote, people's rights to bear arms, that runs into a lot of slippery slopes and issues. The thing that annoys me and has annoyed me for a long time about this conversation and other ones like it is when we're not looking at things that are not outliers, which are, you look at a lot of these, I don't know, little demons who have done this shit. They're on SSRIs. They didn't have any friends. There were signs, and you know, you got to ask yourself some questions like, what are we doing chemically to some kids in this country, and how is that affecting the wiring of someone whose body is still developing? Because a lot of the times these shooters are 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. And I still, after all these years, Parkland was 2018, Uvalde, I want to say, was 2021. Maybe I'm wrong, but somewhere in that area. You know, fucking Columbine was 25, 30 years ago. It's like, that's still not a loud conversation. And you would think, especially in the post-COVID era where people are thinking about some of this stuff more about like, well, how much are we putting out there that's just accepted to be put in our bodies? Are you ever surprised that we don't have that a little openly now?
Dude, I think that's an exceptionally valid point. And like, I don't believe that, you know, a firearm is a tool. It's not going to kill people on its own.
That's right.
Unless it's a SIG P320. I don't know if you've been keeping up with that drama. That was a little joke. Some people might enjoy, but
I have not kept up with that drama.
Apparently, you know, unfortunately, I have two of them, and whatever. There is a SIG model called. You could probably look this up, Joe, but it's the P320. It's like their fucking Glock 19. It's their flagship, and there is a lot coming out now about that weapon discharging or uncommanded discharge. So there's videos of it going off in the holster for police officers and like putting one in their leg, and like essentially they're a lot of the times people their defense in the beginning was that, oh, you know, your keys got stuck in the trigger well, like in your holster, and like now there's a bunch coming out about like they're not able to explain it. So it's a big thing.
A fucking open AI Glock.
Dude, it's a big thing in the firearms community.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's scary.
It's very scary.
Yeah, SIG M18 pistol returned to service by Air Force Global Strike Command. Can we go down, Joe, on the article?
A lot of police departments are ditching
Air Force
it.
Global Strike Command has returned the M18 modular handgun system pistols back into service. The command paused use of the sidearm to inspect them starting on July 21st following the death of an airman at F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, which TWC was first to report. A week later, some units in Air Combat Command instituted a similar pause, though the status of that is unclear. We've reached out to ACC for comment. The M18 and the larger M17 are used by all U.S. military services, widely replacing the Beretta M9. The weapons, as well as their civilian P320 counterparts, have been fraught with controversy with a drop-safe issue early on in its adoption, which is now fixed, and allegations and lawsuits over the gun going off without the user pulling the trigger with their finger. That is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, so
is that made in China?
No, it's made in New Hampshire, I believe.
God damn it, New Hampshire.
But the one thing I'll say about this one, about the airman being killed, I think there was some foul play that came out after the fact. So I obviously want to be specific about that one. But regardless of this one or not, there's a lot of these coming out. About the 320. So
yeah, we started this week.
Yeah,
You were talking about how guns are a tool and they don't shoot themselves, except for this one.
Yeah. But yeah, man, that's how I think of it. But at the end of the day, I think that there needs to be, I don't know what the right answer is. I know people are super staunch on like, it's in the fucking Constitution, and I agree with that. But at the end of the day, I think like, you know, it's also different state by state. So in Jersey, you have to go through a background check. And I don't see why that's an issue elsewhere. Like, why not? What's the problem with that, you know?
Yeah, I think people get upset when they feel like they're legislating the background checks in a sense that they can say like, oh, this is going to take a year and eventually it'll take 2 years or something like that. I get that, but I'm with you. I think like, you know, there's a constitutional right, but there's also a line. So like, should a child predator who's out of prison be able to buy access to a gun? No, I don't think they should. Right?
I would agree.
Yeah. So there's a line somewhere, and I will admit it turns into a weird line because you start with something obvious like that, and then and it works its way all the way back to something that's like, wait a minute, what's wrong with that person owning a gun? They were speeding, they were doing 65 into 55, and they can't own a gun?
Right.
Like, it gets a little crazy, and that's where people get uptight. I understand that.
And there's truth to it too, because like that's why, you know, organizations like the NRA and, you know, 2A defense organizations, that's why they're so serious about not letting the other side have an inch, because and I get it, you know, you take an inch and then you want another inch and then another inch, and then before you know it.
Yeah. Kind of crazy, though, that you mentioned those guys getting called out to that Blackstone shooting. That motherfucker was just, I mean, do we have an image of that?
Oh, God,
Steve,
dude,
he was
that
just
picture
fucking,
is-
he was walking like
down the street.
Omar Little in the middle of Manhattan just with the gun toed. I swear to God, he was whistling like,
Super chill.
And then
Super
just
chill.
like psycho. Now,
Yeah, look at him.
I haven't, look at that.
Not giving a fuck.
in the middle of a square. Like, no one said anything. No one's like, hey.
I mean, hey, I guess if you're sure of the fact that that's the last 20 minutes, like, fuck it, let it rip, you know? But that just speaks to the insanity of these people, bro.
Now here's the thing on this one. And I want to preface this by saying we got to be so careful with running with narratives. That's what tinfoil hat internet does way too much of. But this guy had been a football player. I can't remember if he went like semi-pro. He didn't make it to the NFL. But this was where the NFL offices were. And he had written some sort of last letter or manifesto claiming he had CTE and was upset at the NFL and all that for doing that. Felt like football had done it to him. That said, he did shoot someone, I believe, in the lobby who worked for NFL, but he went up to the Blackstone floors and he gunned down an innocent woman who was doing nothing wrong. I want to be very clear on that. But this was like it's an interesting coincidence because this lady, can we get her name? It's not fair for me to say that without her name because she was killed here. Wesley LePatner. She ran, she ran the REITs desk, I believe, at Blackstone, the REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust.
Okay.
And the thing about all these big companies, whether it's Blackstone, BlackRock, Vanguard, whatever, many of them are buying up real estate in metro areas and suburban areas around the country because they can at scale with no intention to ever put it back on the market and basically get a monopoly through business competition of the oligarchs, which is they're competing against the biggest companies, which is each other. And they get a monopoly on the houses and then get to control rent prices effectively because if they own a certain percentage of the market, they can kind of control what they sell those things for and leave people chasing rentals instead of home ownership and continuing to kind of inflate away, no pun intended, but pun intended, the ability for future home ownership in America. And so people, they get their heads on with this. I think a lot of it is just downstream, quarterly report fucking competition of people trying to chase to make sure that they don't lose their job, and unintended consequences that it has enormous long-term consequences on society. It is very, very sinister to me that is the woman who was shot, the woman who's like in charge of that or was one of the people in charge on one of the desks for that at Blackstone. And now you don't really hear about that. You just kind of heard on the news, legitimately like her story. This is a married mother of children and whatever, and was a well-liked employee at Blackstone, but they didn't really talk about what she did. And I wonder if there's something they're not telling us there about, her potentially being targeted just because of what she did.
It's Blackstone, not BlackRock.
Yeah, I believe it was Black. We got that right.
They're two
right?
separate companies.
Yeah. BlackRock's a separate company. It was Blackstone.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know too much about it.
Yeah. I don't know. When I see stuff like that, and then you see stories go away, this is where my light goes off a little bit because it's like, why do they want that going away? Is there a little racket that they don't want to tell people about?
I think that's it's good to be a skeptic.
I think so too. But there's a danger with that.
Yes, there
then
is.
You think everything's a fucking conspiracy.
That is the danger.
And I run into that all the time with people.
I bet.
Oh my God. I'm just like, guys, go out, touch some grass, look at the sky, it's blue, everyone's happy. I'm not saying everything's great. We got some problems. Right. And there's some real conspiracies.
Well, but at the end of the day, it's been very generous of the CIA to contribute to my success and your success and Danny's and,
Yeah, apparently they have their own investment arm and they fund all these shows, which, thank you guys. I was unaware you were doing that. You could have got me out of my parents' house a lot sooner. That would have been nice. Yeah. But, whatever.
Dude, let's talk about this because I asked John about this because
Kiriakou.
Yes. I had a feeling that people trust what as far as ex-CIA officers go, people trust him, I think.
Because he fucking hates them. Yeah.
Right. Whatever the case is. But, so did you happen to see Shawn Ryan on Tucker Carlson?
I know he went on it. I saw clips. I didn't.
He talked about, long story short, he talked about like the CIA infiltrating podcasts. And the example that he used was Shawn had this guy on who, Blarim Scoro is his name, and he was a CIA and FBI agent. That is an asset, not an officer.
This
right?
is the guy he asked on camera. I saw this clip. He asked the dude on camera, "What if the CIA just sent you here to say this or something?" Yeah,
dude. But I'm interested to talk to you about this because, again, for people that didn't see it, the point that Shawn made was, let's say this guy Blarim Scoro, like his story is like, let's say it's Al Qaeda and it's in the Middle East. At one point in the interview, he mentions to Shawn something about Russia and something alarming about Russia, that they were trying to like smuggle some nuclear material somewhere or proliferate something weird. And then Shawn, like, he asked the guy on the show, he's like, when's the last time you had contact with the agency? Which is a good question.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
January.
exactly. Yes, and his story was that he got burned by the agency. And Shawn was like, well, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. That seemed a little out of place. So if the agency, for example, knew that you were coming on this podcast, the Shawn Ryan Show's got quite a bit of reach, and they said to you, hey, say whatever you want, but just work in this one thing. And in this case, it didn't come up organically, so he just fucking Hail Married it and threw it in there. And dude, that got the wheels turning in my head. Like, it's one thing to have somebody that, you know, people speculate is like just running the CIA narrative to the ground, but then there's another thing. It's another thing to have a person that it's just one sentence.
One thing.
Which is fucking crazy. That I had never thought about that until he said that. And I asked John about it. And but what do you think about that?
What did John say about it?
He said I could totally see it. You know, you got shit like Mockingbird and CIA and media, and why wouldn't they?
So I got so many thoughts on this, man. And Shawn's absolutely right. It could just be one sentence or like one little side thing. It's almost like they lull you to sleep and say, yeah, by the way, nuclear bombs, Russia. Like, oh, keywords hit. You know, and it could be that simple just because it's something memorable and people are playing like, yo, remember that crazy motherfucker with the Russian accent who was saying they were moving nukes on fucking Shawn's podcast? Holy shit. And Shawn, we love Shawn, so that must be true. It can happen. But I always look at it this way. Like when people flip out about like Bustamante being on or something like that, it's funny because I'm like, first of all, y'all are going to hold him in check in the comments section. Secondly, you know who he is. It's on his resume. And I tell him to his face every time, I don't think you ever left. And I think most of you people haven't left. And everyone out there thinks the same thing. So it's open. It's right in front of you. Where I get way more concerned is exactly what you're talking about. When it's someone who comes in here and that's not on their resume. It could be someone in here for something not even fucking geopolitical. Yeah. Nothing to do with it. And I'm not going to comment on all this because I got to be really careful speculating on things where I don't have pure proof. But can I tell you that there have been a few times where my alarm bell goes off after the fact?
Interesting.
Fuck yes. And I know one of them I'm right about. Really? And I wish I could 100% prove it. I can't. But there is one that I know I'm right about. And it's like, well, what? And I go through the tape. I'm like, well, what did they say that could have been something? And that's the worst part. I don't know.
Can you give any context on camera, or are we going to have to talk about this off camera?
No, I haven't even given context to people about it off camera. I've kept this with me and myself. Because it's a big claim. It's a big claim. But and I'm not even saying that's like CIA or something. What I understand about the world that I've learned talking with a lot of different people is that to say the world is run by intelligence agencies is a lazy statement because it's actually deeper than that. It's not necessarily, in my opinion. There's forces we can't see. We can talk about that too. But the forces you can see, let's focus on the intelligence agencies. It's not so much that it's run by them. It's run by the consequences that they view, as Bustamante would say, the casualties in the real world of the actions that they take against each other covertly. And that includes people who diplomatically are friends. Below the surface, these guys can tell you all they want. Yes, the Five Eyes get along more than others. Yes, they share intelligence. No one's full friends. Do you fuck over your friends once in a while because you're afraid they're going to do something to you? No, you don't, right? If you do, that's not a healthy friendship. Got news for you. They're all like that. And it's human nature. So we are living in a world that is just the result of the casualties that occur in these underground things that have nothing to do with who anyone votes for, by the way. It's beyond that. It's past that. And so, yeah, why wouldn't that affect podcasts? How many podcasts has Joe Rogan done, including the MMA show? Almost 3,000, probably like 2,800, something like that. I remember he went on Lex Fridman's show a few years ago, and he talked about it. He thinks about it too. He's like, I fucking talk to 4 people a week. One guy does this, another guy does that, another girl does that. I don't know who the fuck all these people are, nor would I expect him to, by the way. We've seen them do it in traditional media forever, and they're even more open about it there. So, you know, to some extent, my opinion at this point, cynical as it may be, is that anyone in this space, including people that don't even cover these types of events, and there's some sort of, 4D chess second layer to whatever it is that their audience is who listens to them. Could be, let's name a random one, like a Jay Shetty, who's like out there doing mental health stuff. You'd think totally great, right? Jay Shetty doesn't know, it's not his fault. He doesn't know every fucking guy that comes on there and what narrative someone might be trying to push just on the masses and where that comes from. Every show with any attention at any level, independent, mainstream, is susceptible to being used as a useful idiot, and unknowingly, hopefully unknowingly, has been in the past, myself included.
Hey, man, and that's why I asked you about it, because like you and I, we don't have a fucking team of producers to vet people and validate. So I think again, I said this in my podcast with John too, so sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I think the important point is the onus is on the individual, right? Yeah. So it's for you to decide. Like you may have just heard a CIA whatever narrative, but that's for you to decide, man. And I think there's still at the same time there's a line where you and I decide where the line is for who we platform in the first place. But parallel to that line, people have to take everything everyone says with a grain of salt. Yeah. But I think, dude, something that's so interesting to me, like going back to your point about the unseen forces, like, fuck, man, we are so divided in this country, and people are up in arms against each other about this narrative versus this one. And I just I feel dirty when I get involved with it. So I try to keep it, first of all, I keep it entirely out of my show. I don't want to fucking talk about it. I'm not interested in it. I don't like it at all. I don't talk about it with my friends, whatever. But what I think about is that we got these people fighting over these narratives, but we're not even privy to what's going on behind the scenes.
That's right.
Like I just talked to fucking sorry, I keep bringing up John. It just happened.
Yeah. Great guy to bring up.
Exactly. But for example, Netanyahu has asked every president to bomb Iran, and Trump is the first one to do it. And so what people think is like, this is what it is at face value. But I would like to think there is some information behind a classification that you and I don't know about, and there's some reason behind this decision. That's, again, I'm not giving my opinion on that example. That's just an example. Or, because now we look back at it and Monday morning quarterback it and say, oh, well, we armed the Mujahideen in the 80s, and now look what the fuck you did. But at the time, I'd like to believe it's, naive maybe, I'll just call it out, but that they were acting on what information was available to them in that sort of manner. But I don't know, dude. I think about that a lot, and just the fact that, it's all a big fucking show, and we don't see what's behind the curtain. And that, to answer your question, is what I love about having Delta Force operators and CIA officers on, is like, that's the ground truth. Those are the guys that the people in fucking air-conditioned offices in D.C. sent to do those things.
As best as they can see it, where they weren't compartmentalized.
But I'll take it from them over some politician on CNN or Fox.
Absolutely, and I can appreciate it a lot more from them too, because they actually had to do the hard things.
Yes.
I think it's a great point. I think, to answer your question with a hypothesis, the reason Netanyahu might have been successful at getting Trump to bomb Iran is sitting on East 71st Street. And, that's just what it is. There are things that seem
by the way, is that Epstein's penthouse?
Yeah.
Or townhouse, rather? Sorry to interrupt you, but I wasn't sure.
90 71st Street.
Interesting.
And it's like, we now have entered a time period where we still don't know shit, right? But with the internet, we know the toilet. You know, we don't see all the piping, but we can see the water in the toilet for the first time and actually aim and shoot, right? No pun intended on that. But, you know, because of that, now when there are certain things that are so obvious in front of people that then get shoved under the rug, forget the fact that it's offensive to civilians like you and me. Imagine how offensive, I mean, you can see it, how offensive that is to some of the guys that we talk to. And the guys who have lived it, including stuff that they're not comfortable even talking about on camera because it pisses them off so much. It's like, you know, Rogan used to have a great line that I just think was perfect, where he was like, all these people who come up to see the president on day one in office, they were there before he got there. They're going to be there after he leaves. Yeah. And even all those people are still compartmentalized in some way on a need to know in the worlds that they know. So when you put all those compartmentalizations together, no one really knows shit, but the machine, the blob, if you will. That's like Mike Benz's line. The blob knows. The octopus knows because all the tentacles go somewhere. And then maybe there are people at the top of that tentacle who know more, that can know more of those buckets, if that makes sense to people out there. But it gets really tough when you start to look at a guy like Trump, if you ignore the politics, right, and just look at it on the surface. This is a guy who's supposed to be coming in as the political outsider. When you then see him come in, albeit for the second time, and do things that look like it's just a part of the same little inside club and you ain't in it, no matter where you stand, left or right, there's something in that that's demoralizing. I've had a lot of conversations with liberals and conservatives recently. So that ranges on the spectrum from people who really don't like him to people who liked him. I'll say a lot of people I'm talking to on the right side are like, I don't know about this guy now. And I get that, but it's like the common refrain is like, well, at least we could, even from the left, well, at least he could try to do this. And now he's not doing that. It's demoralizing because it's like, does your vote even mean anything? You know, I won't speak for you, but especially off camera, some of these people I've spoken with, they think it's like funny. They're like, yeah, right. Oh yeah, your vote. Yeah.
Making a difference.
Yeah, making a real difference in the world. They're like, it'll move at 5% this way or 5% that way. It's a cultural shift. That's why every presidency goes Republican, Democrat. But it's like the real decisions are being made by something above that. And I don't think you have to be a conspiracy brain to think like that now.
Yeah. I mean, again, man, you don't have to have the answers, but it's good to speculate. It's good to just be aware that what you're seeing may not be the full picture. Just having that lens in general. You don't have to, overanalyze and dissect everything, but just to take everything with a grain of salt and seriously.
You had in that guy Rick Spence, right?
Yeah.
And he's like a cults expert and that stuff. What did he like? Who did he think, quote unquote, runs the world? Hypothesize, and how did he look at it?
He didn't have a definitive answer, but what I found interesting about Rick is just the way that he thinks about things. And I think that would be the thing for people to pay attention to. But like the idea was that essentially, again, going back to this concept of not taking something at face value, it's just about thinking strategically and thinking about what the range of possibilities may be, right? And there's a percentage base assigned to all of those ranges, and is it some fucking cabal of baby eaters that convene once a year and drink blood? Like, sure, that's an option. It might be a 1% option. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So what's more likely is something else maybe. But his point was just don't rule anything out, but don't get attached to something just because you think it's interesting.
That's the problem. Yeah. That's a great point he makes. People don't want to hear that. But people want the most ridiculous, sinister outcome to be the outcome because it makes their life more interesting. And it's easy for any of us, myself included, to fall into that trap. but you can't do that. You have to be able to have honest conversations about things. But the internet incentivizes, we are all team whatever, or we are all team whatever. And you're either on the team with every fucking thing, or you're not, and you're not going to be in the algorithm. And I don't know how you think about it, but like, I'm uninterested in that, man. I have a line on this show in the sense that when I bring people on, at least going into it, sometimes afterwards you're like, oh, okay, that was a little fart, and I thought. But when I'm looking at bringing people on, I bring people on from across the spectrum, across all different topics. Sometimes we're not even talking any politics or whatever with some of these people I'm thinking of in here. But it's like in general, what's their worldview? There's a line for me though. Right? If 0 is farthest left and 100 is farthest right, I'm not really interested in going past 20 or 80 to either opposite direction. Because I can predict every fucking thing the person's going to say. They're not going to even listen to probably any counterpoints I might have, not even to rebut them, but to say, have you thought about it this way? Or have you considered this perspective? And like, you know, you talk with people for a long time. Speaking for myself, it's not interesting talking with someone for 3 hours who, again, you can predict everything they say and you're not going to get anywhere with them and you're not going to learn anything new.
Yeah. And I give you credit for doing what you do because I respect your ability to talk about these things, especially geopolitically with people and like be able to stand your ground. And I think, again, for people that, you know, I don't know how much of that is like intrinsic to you, like let's call it talent versus just being well versed on something and like doing a lot of front end research. And I would say, like, again, going back to that talent piece, the more you verse yourself in something, the less you have to rely on talent to get you there. Sorry, what was the original point that you made up? Or because I wanted to say something about that.
What I'm saying is how you look at the spectrum of who you're talking to, like speaking to the extremes. How interesting is that?
Well, dude, that's one of the big things I think is a problem that feeds into this division is like you and I, there was a time where if you and I thought differently, we could just sit down and have a conversation about it and be friends afterwards. And I don't really fucking care what you think. Like
right.
It's not relevant to our friendship, so to speak, like in people's lives. But now, like, I feel like what I see with this stuff and like the infighting and division is that people, when they have a conversation, it's let me give you an example. Like, let's say, I don't know, let's say you're on the right and I'm on the left, and you and I are having a conversation, and I like if Trump does something that's great, Trump cures cancer, I on the left don't want to say that Trump did something good objectively because it feels like I'm ceding ground to you, right. And it's all this all the time, and that's what I feel with people, man. And I'm like, if that's what it's gotten to, then how the fuck are we ever going to get to the middle anymore? How, like, where is the truth going to lie then on that spectrum? And how can we even tell where it is?
I don't know is the answer to that question from my end. But also what I do feel confident in is that if you're looking at power structures like the elites, just put them all in one bucket, regardless of who that is. A divided society is a compliant society because you distract them with these shiny little objects over here to fight over. Everyone gets all pissed off. That's where social media runs to. The algorithms push it. They get mad at each other. There's infighting. There's whatever. And then there's some political repercussions. But the real things are what happen behind closed doors where decisions are made, often about faraway places that impact the world economically, socially, politically, and geopolitically. You know? And I think that if you look throughout just even American history, post-industrial revolution even, that's probably a pretty fair takeaway. Look at the British Empire, pretty fair takeaway. You know, that's what these guys do. And, you know, one of the things, I'm sure you have these moments in your podcasts, these little things, sometimes maybe that fans listening don't notice like you do because they're not in there, but these little things where someone says something and the context in which they're saying it and the way in which they say it and the moment in which they say it while you're sitting there with them, you're like, whoa, like, holy shit, that's a good point. One of them for me was when Bustamante in episode 107 with me I think this was like an hour, 40 minutes in or something like that. He was like, we need an enemy. We need an enemy that we can look at and say, that's the enemy that we can all coalesce around, so that that's where our focus goes. And the saddest part about that statement is that, historically speaking, he's not wrong. And what he was trying to say is, you want to solve some of the division problems in this country, have a common thing to fear. And right now, the common thing that we fear is each other. We need to point that outward, which is sinister as fuck and has massive implications towards human life on this planet. So I don't support that. But psychologically, I have to look at this objectively and say, like, is he wrong? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Right? Do you think that exists right now? Like some sort of enemy that everyone can coalesce around and look at, that you think is going to get worse?
I don't know. Nothing stands out. I mean, dude, I think that we're just against each other, and the enemy is whatever flavor of the week it is. The enemy is whatever topic that has been chosen for us to beat each other up over.
Yeah.
Why, does something stand out to you that I'm missing? Because I might very well be.
No, I don't disagree with you. I think what they want it to be now is China. And that's understandable, the size of their GDP, some of the soft power they're doing around the world, certainly. And like, it's run by the CCP, which it's politically, we can complain all we want about what we got here. It's way better than that. So some of that would make sense on paper, but it's like also, no one's thrown a bomb at us. No one's done anything like that. And they want people to, whoever they are. They want people to get so into fighting against an ideology like that. And I think the louder noise of social media and things that are happening here is drowning that out. And so, yeah, we're divided, so we're compliant in a lot of ways, but it's a pain in the ass, I'm sure, for the elites, because now all these idiots got a goddamn voice on the internet. I'm sure it drives them nuts when they see like the biggest show in the world is Joe Rogan, who's like a fucking comedian, cage fighting analyst who talks with whoever he wants, and God bless him for doing it.
So crazy, man. So crazy. Yeah, I love that about Joe. The fact that he'll just have anybody on. But yeah, I mean, to your point about China, bro, like that's a good example, because there's a lot of different people that'll tell you a lot of different things about China. There's one school of thought, and you'll hear people talk about this on podcasts, that they are fucking public enemy number one, the most formidable threat that we have. Like, it'll come to a ground war with them, and we're already in an economic war with them, and how much some of that may be true. And then there's other people that are like, well, yeah, like China's serious, but maybe not. I wouldn't go that far with it. So that's just a perfect example of something that some of it may be narrative based. I'm sure the Lockheed Martins and the Raytheons of the world would love for people to buy into the fact that China can build ships at whatever 20 times the rate that we can, and that they've gone hypersonic and all this stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's always narratives behind certain things, and that's, again, bro, that's just the tough part with me. Like, we just talk to people and listen to what they have to say, but where the ground truth is, I don't fucking know. I don't have a security clearance, so.
Right, you do the best with the information you have and the person sitting in front of you, and that's the tough part of the job. But you're focused in this case. It would be on a country that's halfway around the world with all different alliances and influences from us and everything. But we're apparently even struggling with that on the home front, because China is one of many places that's using like the cartels to run like a backwards war against us through our own border that we fucked up. Like, we can't even get our shit right at home, and we're worried about how we're going to look internationally against other places. I'm not undercutting our military and their power and all that. I hope we don't got to use it. But it's like, man, sometimes it feels a little ass backwards. You had what's her name? Fucking Mariana Van Zeller.
Oh,
I mean, she's covered all that stuff.
Dude, she is a G, bro. I had so much fun on that podcast. And again, I wasn't, like, prior to having her on, and again, apparently this is extremely common knowledge, and I'm an idiot, but I wasn't aware of just the scope, or the scale rather, of cartel operations, especially inside the United States. And she kind of got me up to speed on that, because in their new season that just came out, she did an episode on cartels embedded within.
What's the name of that show again?
Trafficked with Mariana Van Zeller. It's on Hulu and National Geographic. But yeah, bro, I had no idea, because like that, again, that was the first time that I actually dove into the cartels on my show. And I didn't know how deep those roots were. And,
what did she find? Like, what was the context there?
So, dude, and again, like the stuff that blew my mind, people that love the cartels and they're all in on this, like that's probably common knowledge to them. But just how common it was to just grease the palms of border agents, the fact that they're paying them all off and slipping things right through the border. She had one, she talked to this drug mule who smuggled like a massive amount of fentanyl over the Mexican border into California in some compartment in her car. And so they watched the car go through the border, and the drugs weren't found. She was like, because I asked her too, I was like, were you conflicted, like letting those, not that, what are you going to do? We talk about that. But the point that I was going to make was that she watches it come in, and then on the other side of the border in America, she, goes up to the car and interviews her. Obviously, her face is blurred out and everything, and her voice is distorted. But she was like, weren't you concerned? Weren't you worried? Like, that's terrifying. You're going to go to prison forever. And she's like, oh, no, that's why I come at this time of day, because, like, I know this guy, and, he works for us.
I got a guy.
Yeah, he works for us.
Oh, my God.
Shit like that. She talked about just how, like, they set up networks inside the U.S. So, again, take what I say with a grain of salt. This is secondhand. I'm not an expert on this. But just how they bring in drugs, like all kinds of crazy shit, man. And fuck, I know you've had a couple people on here. I know obviously John Norris, and I just thought of him because of the China connection. But you've had Ed Calderon in here, right? And then who's
Katarina Schultz.
Yeah, but there's another man. I can't remember.
Ken McGee, who was fighting the Colombian cartels.
I don't know.
Norris was 265. Schultz was 294 and 313. And then I had in Johnny Mitchell for 314. Ed Calderon was 292 and 293. Matthew Hedger was 290 and 275. He was undercover with the cartels.
Yeah, what I saw clips from that. I know you had him twice, but he was like a knock or something embedded with cartels. What is his story,
bro? Woo! Yeah, return my text, Matt, if you're seeing this. I haven't talked to you in a while, pal. But he was a knock, as you said, non-official cover, which is the deepest form of spy that there is. You want to talk, like, CIA is already supposedly case officers deniable. This is completely off books deniable. It's straight out of a movie script. The only reason he is not in anymore in that capacity is because his identity was leaked. There was a leak at CIA.
Jesus.
He didn't confirm who it was. It sounds like it was Chinese intelligence, got some sort of leak. I can't confirm that, but that's what I implied or inferred from what he was saying. And there were 5 or 6 different knocks whose identities were uncovered and their names were published on the dark web. So the chances that anyone listening even saw this are slim, but that's still something public. They were published by that foreign intelligence agency, which was probably China, and they all had to be pulled from the field. Wow. So when you talk about guys who actually like aren't doing their job at CIA anymore, like he actually can't. Like he and there's a lot of countries he can't go to. But his job was to be a professional criminal. They trained him to be a money laundering expert in particularly, and he had to play the role of a guy who was working at, a regular corporation who had this skill and at first infiltrated biker gangs and eventually through those connections just happened to be able to infiltrate the cartels. And the idea was that it's not like to infiltrate it to then use those organizations to actually commit the crimes, though he was doing money laundering for them and other things. So it's like they are doing crimes, but it was more so like, take the biker gang example. They're an international organization. It was a top 4 gang. You can't say which, but you can do the math, right? International organization. So if he's a known biker gang guy, like known to different FBIs around the world, if you will. Let's say he and his buddies take a trip to Hungary. He gets into the country. What's the intelligence saying there? They're like, oh yeah, these are biker gang guys. He's identified as a biker gang guy. So when he goes back to his hotel, changes his identity for a second, and goes and does some nuclear football meetup with some Russian fucking arms dealer that has nothing to do with the biker gang, he's not even being trailed to be looked at for that because he's not suspected. It's like double level spying so that you can do all these horrible things for 99.9% of the time. And then that 0.1% of the time, it gives you a cover as a criminal to step out the back door for a minute and go do real CIA shit. So this is what he would do. And he ended up in the cartels. And this was the craziest thing, Dalton. This is like when it comes full circle and you're like, fuck. He's sitting here on March 5th. And I had Shawnee in here the second time with him, she was a DIA lady. And he tells the story, the second podcast we did, number 290, he tells the story about how he personally flipped a top 10 guy at a top 10 bank, normal dude, to launder money for the cartels. And he runs through
American Bank?
Not going to say.
Did he say?
No.
Okay.
But like top 10 bank, top 10 guy, normal guy, didn't have blackmail on him, just got him to flip.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then they used this because that was his job to do for the cartels, and he was really good at it. And he goes through this whole thing a week later to the day I have Ed Calderon sitting there. And Ed Calderon at one point is like, so, I mean, are we not going to talk about the CIA? And how
come on, Julian, Dorey.
And how they're flipping big bankers at top 10 banks and top 10 guys? Oh, yeah, they're doing that. I'm like,
no shit.
I'm like, hold on, let me check these goosebumps. Funny you say that, Ed. I had the guy who actually is responsible for doing that sitting in that chair a week ago. And Ed didn't even flinch. He's like, well, there you go. Oh. Like, there's your proof. But it's like, this world is so complicated. Now, that's one where we're actually inside it and doing things. And yet, in the same world where we can pull off that kind of stuff, like our people or whatever, you know, Mariana's uncovering all the shit that we can't even keep our own leaks together. Like on a basic level, like a basic mules coming across the border with fucking fentanyl to kill our kids. It bothers me so much. It's like there's chosen places for competency and there's chosen designated places where we just decide we don't need it. And who ends up paying the price is the citizens of the country.
God, bro. I mean, first of all, I think that she says this too, but the unfortunate part of it is that none of this, fentanyl being smuggled over the border would be relevant if there wasn't a demand here for it.
Yeah.
Like we love it. We fucking love it. We want more of it. We want to kill ourselves with it. And like, I understand addiction is a disease. I'm not disparaging that. That's not my point. But my point is, I think we need to correct that first because, yeah, we can talk about the nature of these cartel members and the people that bring drugs in, but again, it's all basic supply and demand, bro. And like that's what I asked her too. I was like, how the hell do they turn these people? How does somebody like Matthew Hedger turn a banker and money, right? And like and that's obvious to a lot of people, but it's life-changing money. Like how is the average person going to say no to that? If you're a border agent and you make, I don't know what the hell they make, and the cartel offers to, 5, 10x that just to turn your head for 30 seconds, people are going to take that deal. But yeah, bro, I mean, that's another thing that I find really interesting about this intelligence and world is like the people that come on our show, they're is that a bad one?
Unfortunately,
really?
Like the term, I have an idiot who it probably has no concept. I'm not even going to say it, but
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Something world, meaning this intelligence world.
I can't. And it's such a fun word to say in that context, but
yeah,
you know how it goes.
Yes, I do.
It's so stupid.
In this world, these things, like the people that come on our show and they're telling stories from operations that have been declassified and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing to me is like the layers.
Yeah.
Like cover as a diplomat, working in an embassy in Iran and then being an operations officer and recruiting people at cocktail parties on the side is one thing. Cover as a criminal in a biker gang is a different one. There's layers to uncover. I find that fascinating.
You also have to psychologically find the people who fit the profiles to be able to do this.
Yes, you do.
And that's always, I mean, you've seen why John could have been great at what he did.
Oh my
There's
God,
so
dude.
much psychologically going on there. But that was the thing with Matthew. He's like, you know, borderline, like on the spectrum, low key dude. And there was a moment in 275, the first time he was in here, where I said, what would you talk like when you were this guy? He was this guy for like 10, 15 years. And like you could see him almost get like internal anxiety that now he was like, there's cameras and he's going to do it. And it took like a second. And it wasn't like watching an Australian Heath Ledger turn into the Joker speaking, you know, American English like a crazy clown, right? Which is an incredible acting performance. This was way more subtle. He was like, he would speak a little faster. I was like, oh yeah. I'm like, all right, let's role play a little bit. And then he like, you could see him be like, oh, we're doing this. And literally like, there's this thing where it wasn't like this.
Right.
But it was like.
That's too obvious.
It was like, wow, did I just unscrew that? That's crazy. Wow. It was like, lean forward. Like, you mean to tell. And it was just like clip, and his soul just left his body, and he was that dude again.
Interesting.
And I'm like, oof, this is different than winning an Oscar. You know the cameras are going to stop with that. When you're in a character like this for that many years, you have no idea when those cameras are going to stop, and you have to assume there's no such thing as takes. You know what I mean? So crazy. You talk about the layers with these people. It's crazy to think about just how high the stakes are. You had on the dude Scott Payne too.
Yeah. Oh.
Like how many places was he undercover?
Fuck. Well, he infiltrated the Outlaws biker gang. He infiltrated this group called the Base, which is a
Al Qaeda. That's what that means.
I know. I think I don't remember. He mentioned it that's the translation from Arabic to English is the Base, but I don't know if they knew that, and that's why they claim to not, because they also claim to not be like a terrorist organization. But this group called the Base, which they are essentially a neo-Nazi group, but what they're labeled as is accelerationists. Are you familiar with this term?
Accelerationists.
So what they believe is that society as we know it in America is going to collapse, and what they want to do is accelerate that collapse of society. That way, when it all breaks down, they can set up a white ethno-state. Oh. Yes. Oh. Good guys.
That sounds, wow.
And again, going back to your original point, bro, a lot of these, I say guys, they were kids. One of them was like 18 years old. Then they were all, the oldest of them, I want to say was like, I think the leader was in his mid 30s, but the majority of them, let's say, were like early 20s. And that's something Scott said. He's like, if you're a parent and you see your kid, I don't want to say stockpile, like I fucking stockpile ammo because I shoot a lot. It's something I enjoy. But
so like, it's okay when you do it,
but this, I don't buy plate carriers and put racist patches on them and fucking buy night vision goggles and like that sort of thing. And again, I'll caveat that by saying not that there's anything wrong with owning a plate carrier if you're a civilian, but I'm not going to be the guy to take pictures of myself on a range wearing one, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Anyway, these kids, their idea was that, that this is what they were going to do. They're going to set up this white ethno-state. It wasn't very well planned or executed. They didn't have a ton of infrastructure for it. But what he ended up getting them on is they had planned the murder of this Antifa couple. They were journalists, I believe. And dude, the scary thing is like the level of detail that they planned for this murder. Like down to the fact that they bought, do you know what so for people who aren't familiar, like when you shoot any sort of pistol or rifle, there is like the full bullet that you see, the very end of it is the projectile, and the brass is like what holds the gunpowder and what the primer hits. That's ejected from the gun. So if you're seeing people shooting and there's shit flying out, that is the brass. Right. So what they did is they bought brass catcher bags. So what it is, it's a bag that attaches to where like
no casings.
Exactly. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about picking them up. They also brought revolvers because when you pull the trigger on a revolver. There's no casings ejected. The cylinder just keeps spinning.
Is there any residue that can come from that though?
I don't know that. I'm sure.
Trace?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I don't know what the deal with that is because that's been around for a while. That idea.
I'm not a ballistics expert.
I'm not either. Especially the kind of shit that's left. And I'm sure these days I would like to think that people can really like figure these things out.
Right.
Anyway, they did that. They scrubbed themselves at a motel room to make sure that they didn't drop any skin flakes at the crime scene. They ditched all their electronics at a campsite. They did all this shit, bro. And then to the point where Scott talks about this. One of the kids says to Scott, he says, he's like, I heard that essentially like your bowels, I guess, give out when you kill someone for the first time. This is what he read. So they all wanted to wear diapers. And Scott just like implied that he had already done that. And he's like, I think I'm good, bro.
So you keep saying kids. First of all, do you have like an exact age range?
You could look them up. Just look up the base accelerationist group. But again, early 20s. One of them was really young. And I keep talking about it as if they did these things. They planned to do those things, and the team apprehended them before they actually went there.
Approximately how old was Scott at the time he was infiltrating?
He was a grown man. So
what was his cover with them if he was a lot older?
So it wasn't a cover because they recruit on these
and now we're on a fucking watch list after typing that in.
No, well, yeah, you and me both then.
Sorry, fellas.
Well, if you listen for some context, whoever's watching.
Hey, listen, we're clean. We're clean. Let's not put that on the screen. We're gonna. Yeah.
Dude, wild stuff. But yeah, so they recruited on these like Telegram apps and stuff. And it was basically like, if you're racist enough, then you can come join us. And they did like a full interview panel. And like Scott told stories about like one guy they rejected because he had dated a girl that was like Hispanic or something like that. Or like, he's like, I think I might have like some Puerto Rican in my blood. And you just hear him behind like the interview panel. Like, I think that might be a problem. Seriously. Dude, but like bizarre shit. And they like, he says they like bastardized paganism. So one thing he did with them is they stole a goat from a neighboring farm, slit its throat, drank its blood, and took acid because it's in paganism, I guess they were like sacrificing this goat to Odin. So,
how does he seems like the coolest dude
oh my
ever.
God, dude.
How do you keep your wits? I mean, you're around some stone cold fucking
killers,
morons, and you know what I mean? Yeah, no, yes, both. Yeah. But it's like a South Park episode sometimes. We're like, yeah, they're taking all our jobs, so we're gonna go kill. Like, how do you not just be like, oh my fucking God.
Dude, and that's what I said, and that's what I asked him. I was like, how because they sit around a campfire and they talk about how bad every other race is. So I was like, okay, like if you have to get into this character, how much do you lean into it? And what I asked him, I was like, okay, so you guys are sitting around a campfire. Like, do you just wait for them to say F white people, I'll say, and you just like, yeah, F white people.
Yeah.
Or do you initiate? And do you start the thread? And that's something that he said too. He's like, you have to know when your like red pill moment was. So for him, meaning like, I don't know what this fucking red pill thing means. I think that means like when your mind changes on something, because the red pill is like a space. I don't, whatever.
Yeah.
But him, it was a real thing because his mother got grabbed or groped by someone at a gas station when Scott was a little kid.
Oh, wow.
And I believe it was like a black man. So he used that story and they bought it.
Oh my God, he like method acted it too.
Yeah, and it was real. And I think you want as much of it to be real.
Yeah. Wow. How long was he undercover? Like it's a while. No, just like in general.
Bro.
He did this stuff for years.
Well, that's what I said. I was like, Scott, you're too humble to say this, but like you have to be one of the most storied undercovers in the history of the FBI because the way he explained it is like, okay, if you got all the FBI undercovers in a room and you're like, okay, how many of you have been the primary on one undercover, and a certain amount of hands go up, and then you say, okay, what about 2? What about 3? What about 4? And by the time you get to 4, there's like not that many hands.
Yeah.
And he's run the gamut, bro. It's so impressive.
But he also is doing the starring actor jobs. Here's what I mean by that. This Jim DiOrio has a better way of putting it. My friend Jim DiOrio has been on the show a bunch. He was undercover FBI on and off for 11 years of his 20-something year career there. And he was like, you'd have your starring roles. So, for example, he went undercover for a long period of time with an unnamed dangerous criminal organization. He had to gain fucking 100 pounds to do it. He doesn't even look like, when he has a picture of it, doesn't even look like himself. It's
Why
crazy.
do you got to gain that much weight?
Because he had to look a certain part for the
How you doing?
organization. No, different organization.
Okay.
But he said then there were other times where he got to be a guest actor, meaning during the day, you know, on Monday and Tuesday is in the office making cases with the suit on and the badge for FBI. And Wednesday, you know, they get a call on the fake phone that says, "Oh yeah, we're doing a jewel thing on Wednesday." Yeah, he's Timmy now. Yeah, no, I'll be there. And he shows up in character the next day and then doesn't have to play that character for another 2 months, right? So it's like you're on and off. But he's like, when you are doing one of the starring roles, which is like what your boy did here over and over again, it's like there's a danger of liking the people and becoming that person. Now, did he say that it was easier to not like the guys who were like stone cold racist versus maybe, I don't know, the biker gang guys who were drinking and doing coke and having a good time? Was there any distinction there for him?
I did ask him that. He's very professional though, and he didn't say, like, obviously he made it clear a number of times that he doesn't condone or didn't condone what they did, but he didn't say outright that, like, oh, these kids were idiots and it was more difficult for me to get in character. But he also had certain methods, like when he would get back to his hotel room or something from a day of, like, again, they would like train on the range in full kit, like set up targets and shoot and just become very proficient. That's what they would do. And then when he would get back to his room at night, he would then like he wore a skull around his neck, like a necklace. And then when he got back to his hotel, he would take the skull off and put his cross back on. And like little subtle things like that.
Oh, he would do that.
Yes, to remind himself that he was coming out of character.
Whoa.
But with the Outlaws thing, like he is a biker.
Yeah.
You know, and that was something really interesting we talked about. Is one of the guys, Scott Town, became like his very best friend. And dude, that's the crazy thing about that undercover thing. Because when he teaches now, this is the example that he uses. He's like, when I get into a room and people, you know, I'm teaching people about undercover. He goes like, what do you think the definition of an undercover is? And people throw out a bunch of different things. And he says the definition of an undercover is building friendships that you are going to betray. And in that case, that was a real friendship. And he did. I mean, you know, it's the game, bro. It's you know, I forget what it is. Like the cartoon where the one cop checks in the morning and the one robber checks in the morning and they say, you know, see you at work. Good luck.
It's a strange thing, though. And I mean, different guys that I've had in here have done similar things, like Matt Hedger, and he talks about it. He's like, you see these guys with their kids. You see that they can be a normal human off the clock sometimes, but they have this thing that can turn on that's not normal and not good and does not belong in society, and you have to keep reminding yourself that. But it's strange. It's a very strange thing to think about. And I would say any of these guys, a Scott, a Jim, a Matt Hedger, if they have a gene that if they had wanted to be an Academy Award-winning actor, they clearly could. Because this is like, I'm sure I would love, you know, it'd be amazing if you got like a Daniel Day-Lewis in a studio to sit with a guy like Scott Payne, have Scott tell his story about the things you would do, and then have like one of the goats break down and be like, yeah, it's pretty good. You know what I mean? Like, oh, cool. Wow, I'm going to write that one down. That's like crazy. Because Daniel Day is doing it for the love of the game and takes it very seriously, but it's not life and death.
Right.
This guy can't ever really turn the character off, except for that. That is interesting. He would put the cross on at night to remind himself who he was. I've heard other people talk before where they're like, you can't do that. You can't, because like you can get stuck in that for a minute. So that's cool that he was able to do that. But like, other than when he's alone, you never get to turn it. There's no turning it off. And it's not 4 months of shooting, you know, a film. It could be fucking 4 years of being that guy, being away from your family, not able to tell your family about it. People lose. Did he lose some family or friends in that career?
No, he remained married, which again, in a field like
unreal.
that, yeah, exactly. It's unheard of. He stayed married, and gosh, man. Yeah, and one thing I forgot to add is this guy who was his best friend, Scott Town. He would hold his kids. Their daughters were the same age. They liked all the same stuff. Like they may as well have been brothers. And then he told a story about sitting in his apartment, Scott Town's apartment, one day, holding Scott's baby, and just thinking about this whole thing. And then he looked on Scott's fridge, and he had a sticker on it that said WWSD. And Scott's like, "What's that?" And he goes, "Oh, that's what would Satan do?" And Scott goes, "Oh yeah, we're not the same."
Right.
But yeah, bro, that is.
But he couldn't. So his cover involved him obviously Scott not knowing that he had his own kids like that, right?
I don't know. His cover was that because again, you don't go into it hot, right? Like if you walk up to a biker gang in a bar, like, "Hey fellas, you want to commit some crimes?" Like they're gonna fucking sniff you out immediately. So like you gotta
imagine going home to your wife and be like, "Yo, I got a new assignment at the office today. We got to go undercover. It'll be fine. There's gonna be a few bikers coming over. Just tell Susie it's gonna be cool."
Yeah. I think his cover was that he was getting a divorce, and that explained him being there without his family, maybe. But yeah, crazy man.
Did he talk about were there emotions from his life and other things that happened to him maybe when he was growing up that allowed him to do this? And maybe to give you an example of what I mean, like Jim was a special forces guy and lost dudes out on the battlefield and has to this day severe PTSD from it and huge hairs that stand up on the back of his neck and get him anxious all the time. And he was obviously able to harness that and use that, I don't know, this isn't the right term to all encompass it, but just for the sake of argument here, use that paranoia to play these roles really well and get in there. Did Scott use anything from his life other than some of the personal stories you mentioned?
Yeah, he did, and I asked him about this too because again, this was I try to work in or I have the past couple of episodes I've done. I try to work in different sorts of questions. Like for him, what I asked him, I was like, okay, people are, after 2020, a lot of kids especially, they don't know how to have a conversation with each other. They don't know how to shake somebody's hand and look somebody in the eye, and people are having trouble making friends and just striking up a conversation with people. And I asked him, what would you recommend to people to just be more comfortable being themselves and making friends and that sort of thing. So to your question, what he did do is he's very outgoing and gregarious and self-deprecating and that sort of thing, normally, right? And you want to use as much of what you got normally. So he used a lot of that, he's just a fun guy to be around, just a great storyteller, really chill dude, somebody that you like being around. And so
great storyteller.
Yes, which is very, very important for a format like this,
Not even that.
For
to
our
do
shows.
that job.
Oh, yeah.
Storytellers run the world. It keeps coming up today with different guys that we find interesting in our jobs who obviously use that skill in their real life.
But yeah, and dude, an example I asked him about, he had something in his book about basically he talked himself onto a flight when the door was closed, and it was a detail part of the story, it was part of another story. But I asked him, I was like, what is that? What is that ability to talk to people and move the needle and make things happen? And he's like, dude, that's just me. He said when he would take courses through the FBI, you can teach those things, but he would realize in the middle of the course that, my brain already does this,
So fascinating. We get to live a little vicariously through it. That's what these dudes are saying. Isn't that crazy? Someone's sitting across from you.
Yes.
In your little studio, or in my little studio here, and we're making a cute little YouTube video.
Yep.
And they're like, let me tell you about the last 25 years of my life, boy.
It's crazy, dude.
And you're like, yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go right ahead.
By all means.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear more.
Oh, my God. Are there people you want to talk to that you haven't been able to yet or get into contact with?
Oh, bro, I got a list, as I'm sure you do.
My list is a little crazy. It moves all over the place. Do you actually think about it like my dumbass. Like, oh, I want to talk to this guy and then that guy and then that. Mine's just like, oh yeah, they seem interesting.
Yeah.
It's like very ADD. But,
Well, oh yeah, yes, big time. Because there's a lot of people that are really interesting,
Yeah.
and that's the point, right? Like,
and I forget about him. I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to talk to that guy.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
well, they are. That's true. But that's the point, bro. You don't have to have some sort of crazy story or be renowned for like your average police officer, your average firefighter. Like these people have incredible stories, man. So like you don't have to be that person. But yeah, bro, there's all kinds of people that I want to talk to for sure. I mean, I'm endlessly interested in other people's stories.
Yeah.
You know.
You did a good one with what's his name, Tim Brown.
Oh,
the
thank you.
FDNY
Yeah.
guy.
Oh God, dude. Yeah. Speaking of
He was there
firefighters,
on 9/11. He lost like all his friends in the towers.
he is. God, what a great guy. He's another guy that I've had an opportunity to hang out with a little bit outside the show, and just a really, really good man. And he is an incredible storyteller. And like, dude, he is a walking memorial for those 343 firefighters that died
A
on 9/11.
walking memorial.
Because
What a term.
yeah, for people that haven't listened to him talk, like he goes through the events of the day and seeing all his best friends from the past 20 years, and they're all dead, all of them. And he knows their very last moments. He knows where they went, and like, and the way he explains it, dude, it's just incredibly emotional. And like, he doesn't hold back either, which I fucking love. Like, he lets it rip, and like he gets emotional, and he cries over his friends and memorializes them and immortalizes them. And I thought it was like, what an honor, man. That was one of them that where I was like, fuck, what an honor to be able to sit here with someone and hear the stories of these people and have this like in my little podcast studio, as you say. Incredible, man. Incredible. He's been on Danny too. He's the best. I highly recommend, especially when 9/11 rolls around, as it is soon. Watch it, man. You'll hear the stories that we've been talking about, the best and worst of humanity, and in this case, the best. Because again, going back to that point, those guys knew after the first tower collapsed too. They knew that it was likely that when they ran up those stairs, they weren't coming back to save the lives of people that they didn't know, and they fucking went up anyway.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
It's one of those things that's one of the first. I have scattered memories from before that day when I was really, really little. Like, oh, I can remember this place or that thing. That's one of the first days that I remember. I guess I was like 7 years old or something like that. Like, start to finish, every part of the day. And I couldn't fully comprehend what it was. But as the months and years went on after that, it got more and more real. And like, you're from this area of the world. Did you and your family know people who died in those towers?
Yeah. One of my friends, Chris Rossini, he lost his dad.
Yeah. And it's like, it hits extra for people who are from this area of the world. I knew a couple people in those towers too. And more specifically, I should say, I was young. I should say my parents knew a couple of people in those towers. But, it's a personal event in that way. But it's also, when you look at modern history, arguably the most seminal event that has occurred in the 21st century. Like, I always say, the 1990s didn't end on January 1st, 2000. They ended on September 11th, 2001, because that is the before and after of what our world looks like. It is all downstream. It started massive geopolitical conflicts, wars that translated into other wars that have caused all these problems, an economic boom that happened on the outset of it and then turned into an economic bust on the back end of the presidency that was in charge during that time, that completely changed the complexion of a generation financially, emotionally. It was like rolling up a ball of dynamite and just blowing up what we knew of the world, and yet it happened 1 mile from where we're sitting right now. Yeah. Fucking crazy. And then you get guys, that's a beautiful term, a walking memorial, living memorial of those guys, like a Tim Brown, who can tell that story today, damn near 25 years later, as if it happened 2 seconds ago. And he has to live with the idea that for some reason he survived and most of his guys did not. I can't fathom it. And it's just, I don't know. People love to run with every theory about that day and stuff. And trust me, there's a lot that went on behind the scenes that involve other countries that we don't know about, and it's sinister. And I'm not denying that, but I think sometimes we get lost in the fact that a lot of people died that day, and a lot of people had their life changed forever, having to witness everything that day and then live with the fallout.
Dude, he's an incredible person, and like going back to the psychology too, he tells this story year round, man. He speaks on, to whether it's fire departments, he speaks in the intelligence community at conferences, he's on podcasts all the time. He never stops living this story. And he's not doing it for himself. It's not for financial gain. He's actually working on a book now. I think it'd probably be okay for me to say that, but it's not for personal gain, man. It's not for any of that. It's so that we never forget. Never forget means never forget. And that's why he's doing it. So like, gosh, man, and it's so true. 9/11 was just, especially in the kind of people that we have on our shows, it's this one constant that connects everyone. Like fucking John was there on 9/11 at CIA headquarters. Brent enlisted because of 9/11.
Yep, so many guys did that.
It's unreal, dude. And
the mission status changed because of 9/11. All of it.
100%. And to your point, like it wasn't just this time in America. It literally changed the entire world because,
Literally, I didn't realize this until somewhat recently, actually, but I'm an idiot because it was so obvious. Every military guy I've had on, all of whom are no longer active, so they were in it, during this global war on terror period. Some of them were in it before it and during it and after it. Every single person I've ever had on, at some point the question comes up, where were you on 9/11?
Yeah.
And then how did that change things? And it changed everything. For all of them. I mean, we were fighting in fucking Bosnia before 9/11. People don't even remember that, And then these same guys, war footing over here. Let's go. And then we all know the fallout of everything and how it got taken advantage of by a select group of not great people. But it is such a crazy, crazy inflection point, not just for our country, but for the world. So I always appreciate when guys like Tim get to go on and just talk about the day itself and what that was like,
Big time.
You ever worry though that, people were so fucking together on September 12th, 2001. I can remember that. You ever worry that that's unfortunately the kind of stuff it takes for people to actually come together and put aside some base differences?
I don't worry that. I believe that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and I hope that day doesn't come.
Yeah.
But to your point, September 12th, bro, none of the things that, we've discussed around this narrative versus this one, Julian versus Dalton. Julian's not Julian, Dalton's not Dalton.
Right.
We're Americans.
Right. I remember a story my mom told me back then. It's just one of those things I can remember from that week. She was in the gym like a few days later, and one of the women that she always talked to in the gym, they were walking out. And it's crazy to think about, but 8 months before 9/11 was like the most contested election ever. And people were very divided over that. And the woman said to her, she said, I wasn't really sure that Bush actually won, and I don't like him. I voted for Gore, and I wanted him to win, but I'm fully behind him now. And I hope to see us respond to this the way we're supposed to. And obviously that didn't end up turning out great. But something about, like, could you imagine someone saying that about like Trump right now if something bad happened? But like, it's not inconceivable, which is crazy. You could get the person that really hated him to be like, well, they just, whoever it is, just hit us, and I'm rooting for him. And it's like, it's so sad to me that sometimes it takes that.
Well, I hope it doesn't, man. But that's something that I've learned from having these people on too, and just like the insight into these radical Islamists and how they think, and they think long term, bro. It doesn't need to happen. Doesn't need to happen tomorrow, and they'll play the long game. And I hope that we're wrong about that hypothesis, and I hope that it doesn't take something on that scale. But
We have a very unique American view in one respect that's a huge downside, which is that we have trouble even thinking about fucking tomorrow, as we're one of the youngest countries in the world. And we are also not primarily one race. We are all different types of people all coming together, which is the beautiful thing about our country. The thing about a lot of these other countries is they primarily will all be one different separate race, and they have ties that go back thousands of years on the land that they're on. And they also have borders with other countries where there have been massive, geopolitical events and wars that happen between them. Whereas we are, we got borders to the south and north that we got to take care of and stuff, but we are separated from the rest of the world by seas on both sides, which is a huge advantage. I always joke, like outside of the War of 1812, we have never been invaded for a sustained period, and it really fucking shows. And so we are complacent, whereas other places, they generationally understand that they could not exist tomorrow. And so they are thinking about, depending on the culture, it could be 100 years out or it could be 1,000 years out. And like, there's a respect I have for that. But to your point, anyone who could be an enemy or a perceived enemy or potential enemy, just statistically speaking, they're thinking farther out than we do. And, I think unfortunately, a lot of people in America, we take that for granted. And it's crazy that we do that. And, September 11th wasn't that long ago. You know what I mean? But that's what happens over time. People start to focus on other things.
Dude, and I think that, in addition to your point about some of these Middle Eastern countries, that their survival is front of mind for them at all times. I think the further that we get, or any society gets away from the survival line, the more we start to just create these own problems for ourselves.
Yes.
Like, do you think that kids that are starving to death in wherever they happen to be are...
That was a very politically correct way of putting that.
And I'll tell you why I said that. Do you think that those kids are worried about, standing in Starbucks waiting for their fucking coffee and complaining about being oppressed?
Nope.
And I said it that way because I don't, I try not to speak on things that I'm not well educated enough to speak on. In general, on camera is different. And,
How's it different on camera?
That's a good question. I guess because, I'm trying to just be cognizant of the fact that this is not going anywhere. Like this will be here. And I don't want to say things that I'm not perfectly educated on that won't age well, or things that I don't know for a fact.
The things that are happening are going on.
Yeah. Meaning, right. Like, I just don't want to speak on what I don't know. But again, like off camera, maybe I can have a conversation with someone that is a little different than on camera. That's a good question, though.
No, I respect that. It's the one thing, I think the reason my podcast works is because the cameras go on and nothing changes. The one thing you have to be a little bit more measured about is when you get to the most controversial geopolitical issues, things happening around the world where there are massive, lives lost going on in different facets. You got to it matters how you say things.
Right.
And that's what, you will literally see with some of these things, you will see me pause and be like, I know how I'd say this if we were just letting it hang with the boys, but I owe more respect to the situation to say it in a more, educated sounding and being conscious of what I don't know sounding way. And that's the one place where I think you have to, and that's good that you have that, where you have to be careful. Because also, like, I don't think of this thing as anything serious, but like it does have eyeballs, and you don't know who's hearing that and who's passively being like, oh, that must be what the truth is.
Well, exactly.
And I don't want them taking that from me. That's not, people out there need to decide things on their own, not because I fucking say something. That'd be a very bad idea.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as you were saying that, I was kind of thinking more about that. And I think that number one, I try to be professional I think professionalism kind of across the board as it relates to my podcast is really, really important to me. And not to say that I'm perfect at it, but I really try to do my best with it. But the other thing is the fact that I've kind of drilled into my own head not to interject my own opinion on my podcast because that's not what I want. I don't want me on my show. I want the guest on my show. So it's funny being here, sitting here now and thinking about, okay, well now I'm talking a little bit. So it's just something that I've kind of embedded into the way I act when the cameras are on because I want to keep myself out of it. So
are you afraid of the outcomes of what the response could be to that?
No, no. The reason I like what I mean by that is like my show is, if I'm doing my job right, I'm talking as little as possible. I'm not interjecting my own personal opinions or stories or weighing in on something that the guest says. I'm keeping my fucking mouth shut and asking pertinent questions and following the thread. And the interview is about them. It has nothing to do with me. And I think that's what's been working about it because people crave that. There's so many, because again, bro, like, as you know, I think this is a fascinating concept. A podcast, or an interview rather, I think that you've called yourself a podcaster or a conversationalist, not an interviewer. I've heard you say that you've never interviewed anyone a day in your life.
Yeah.
There you go. So the mechanics of an interview are very, very different than that of a conversation.
Yes.
If I'm talking to you in a coffee shop, if we're having a conversation and you're talking for 20 minutes at a time and I'm just fucking looking at you like this, you're going to be like, this guy is a sociopath and I'm worried about what's in his pocket right now. But in an interview, that is the format and it doesn't work otherwise. You know what I mean? So like you have to, for me, I've had to beat these things into my system to resist the natural urge to jump in and convey to someone audibly that you're listening, right? Because the more you say, that's fucking annoying to listen to.
After a while, yeah.
So you learn to do things like convey that you're listening with your facial expressions. And again, these are all things that like I try to be hypersensitive of on my show. And obviously they are kind of dripping into other aspects of this. But yeah.
Well, you're doing an awesome job, bro. And I know you'll keep developing like how you know, what your role in it is. I understand that. It's something you do have to consciously think about. Just if you are getting attention, like you're not necessarily moving the legislative needle, but there's the needle overall when you put all these different shows together of like popular opinion and what people listen to and not. And it's a tough thing to think about. But you do an amazing job with the editing of your show.
Thank you.
The questions are great. The guests have been amazing. You've been at it now for coming up on a couple years, which is great. I like to see people sustain with that. So everyone can check out Dalton Fischer podcast on YouTube. Video is also on Spotify now too, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we got it there, and then
Because of you, I believe.
Listen, bro, I told you, put that video on Spotify.
I know. We are.
That's great. That's great, especially at the quality you're doing. It'd be like a waste not to put it on there. But you also got your Instagram account. We'll put that link down below. And then are you on X too?
Dude, I like made one, but I don't know how
All
to feel
right, we'll
about getting
put that
on X.
down there on X. Yeah, X is an interesting place these days.
I don't know if it's great for my mental health, to tell you the truth.
I don't think it's great for anybody's, but free speech is painful, as they say. So
Fair enough.
anyway, thanks so much for talking, man. It's great to finally hear like a little bit of your perspective from the other side of the mic, and hope to do it again sometime.
Dude, yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me, man. It's cool to be here. And like I said, if it was anybody else, I don't know that I would have done it because I didn't want the attention. But it was like I said, man, you're an inspiration for me, being shown that it can be done. So it's cool to be sitting across from you rather than watching you in your parents' house with Jim Lawler talking about controlled sociopathy.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate that. It's very, very, very cool to hear that. So thank you, and keep doing what you're doing.
Will do, brother.
All right, everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace. Thank you guys for watching the episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button and smash that like button on the video. They're both a huge, huge help. And if you would like to follow me on Instagram and X, those links are in my description below.